Good evening. For those of the public in the audience, if you can please take a seat, we're about to begin the board meeting. Before we gavel in this evening, the Board of Education wanted to take the opportunity to wish our superintendent a very happy birthday. Yesterday, he celebrated his birthday. And while he said that launching our elementary athletics program was the best birthday gift he could receive, we have a little surprise prepared for him tonight. I am happy to say that board member Christina Pritchett took the lead in putting together a little video for the superintendent.
From the Rosemont admin team. Happy birthday, Superintendent Aguilar.
Jorge, this is two of your biggest fans, Daryl and Jay, wishing you a very happy birthday, man. Thanks for all you're doing for kids in our city, this district. We're with you all the way. Have a great day.
Really happy to be here and excited about what we can do together. We'll keep doing it. Have a great birthday.
Hi, Mr. Aguilar. On behalf of Gideon, we want to say
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday, Jorge. Felicidades.
Happy birthday, Superintendent Aguilar. I hope you have an incredible day today. Thank you for the great work you're doing for Sac City students and families, and we hope you have an amazing birthday.
Happy birthday, Superintendent Aguilar. Thank you for taking a leap of faith and joining us in Sacramento City Unified School District.
Superintendent Aguilar, every day I'm reminded how lucky we are to have you here in our community. Thank you for joining us here in Sacramento, and I hope you're having an awesome birthday.
Superintendent Aguilar, happy birthday from Member Wu.
Good afternoon, Jorge. Happy birthday to you, and I hope you make a big wish that comes true for you, your family, us, and all of our students. Have a wonderful day.
Happy birthday, Superintendent. I hope your day is blessed.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Master.
Happy birthday, Superintendent Aguilar. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting of the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education back to order. Item 4.1, our broadcast statement, which will be read by Student Board Member Halbo.
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being recorded in its entirety and will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air Monday, October 8th at noon and Wednesday, October 10th at 6 p.m. and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. We welcome members of the audience to address the board. Please complete a speaker form located in the back of the community room and give them to our communications representative along with any handouts you may have for the board prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please limit comments during public comment to items that are not on the agenda. If you do comment on an item that is on the agenda, we will ask that you please defer your comments until your item comes up on the agenda. Please also turn off your cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate.
Thank you, Board Member Halbo. Item 4.2, the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Oak Ridge Elementary and our Shine students. Before we have the students come up to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance, I did want to share a few words about Shine. Oak Ridge is without a doubt one of the schools that holds my heart in Area 7. Amazing educators, resilient families, and some pretty incredible kids. Shine has really helped this school site blossom in new ways. It's helped our girls see the strength of building their character and becoming a better self. They really build in our young people a spirit of resilience, understanding their self-worth, and through that, getting connected to their purpose in life. We have watched Shine bring remarkable leaders into the classroom, women often who have stories that mirror the stories of the young women that the program serves, sharing their narratives, helping our children uncover their dreams, give a safe space to talk about their fears, and also develop lifelong friendships and sisterhood. Board member Pritchett and I were very proud to launch this program and grow it to over 9 school sites. I am terribly sad to say that we don't have the funding to continue the program this year, but City of Refuge, one of our best partners in their commitment to continue to serve our students, agreed to do Shine at Oak Ridge with our students, irrespective of having any money to serve the program, because they love our kids. And with that, if I can have our Shine students approach the podium and lead us in Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the State of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Stay up here. We're going to come down to present you with some certificates. I have to tell you, our students were very nervous to be here tonight, but I think they did an amazing job.
Like to say a few words?
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Chandra Clark, and I am a 6th grader at Oak Ridge Elementary. I was in Shine last year as a 5th grader, and I am excited to be in Shine again this year as a 6th grader. Shine has helped me have confidence in myself. It has helped me feel happy with who I am. I do not worry anymore about what other kids say about me because I am confident in myself. I am grateful for Shine because it have helped me with a lot.
I can see the confidence. I can hear the confidence in your voice. Would you like to say a few words? No? Alex isn't taking pictures.
You did great. Good job. Can we get a picture with you? Tiffany, come up here with us. Yeah, come on. Come on. This is our wonderful AP, who is the heartbeat of the Oak Ridge community.
Can I get a picture with you?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Moving on to item 5.0, announcement of action taken in closed session.
Yes, Madam President. One announcement out of closed session. By a unanimous vote, the board approved a settlement agreement regarding program specialists. That concludes the announcements out of closed session, Madam President.
Thank you. Item 6.0, agenda adoption.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 7.0, public comment. Mr. Barrios, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have 5 public comments. If you could come on up when you hear your name called, please. 4 public comments, sorry.
Before you call names, I just want to remind everyone we have a very packed agenda tonight. You will each have 2 minutes to provide public comment, and we want to be respectful of everyone's time so that we don't have to cut future public comments later on in the agenda to a shorter time frame.
Cecile Nunley, followed by Kenya Martinez, Jessica and Mason Tavera, and Mac Worthy.
Good evening, Cecile.
Good evening, board members.
I think we've put you to work every night for the district this week.
No. It seems like, and I always have 2 things going every night, so it's kind of difficult. But I'll stay to my 2 minutes, and I just wanted to bring up at this time, still, I want to make the focus on African American male suspension rates. I do appreciate that the board does have a task force, and they are meeting every single Tuesday, which I think is great. But I don't want it to be pushed off, oh, there's a task force, so let's not talk about it. I think it's very important, every single board meeting, we should talk about it. I think it should be an agenda item, and I'm making that request, if at all possible, that it's an agenda item, and at least we know what the suspension rates are once a month, just so that we keep it in front of our face. So I will still always bring it up, so I'm here and bringing it up, and I'll have to leave tonight because I got a second place to go.
Okay.
So you won't see me the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nunley.
Good evening, board. Hello, Superintendent Aguilar. Happy belated birthday. And all members of the board. This is my son, Mason.
Hi, Mason.
Hi, my name is Mason, and
I'm 7.
I'm 7 years old.
You have a stool over there?
What did I say next?
Oh, yeah.
We want to see you, Mason. You got all dressed up for the board meeting. Perfect.
What do I say? You tell him about Miss Megan.
So Miss Megan is my OT teacher. I really want her to come back to our school, but my mom said that she's been gonna cut off from.
We were talking about the budget, and since Sac City Unified is thinking about cutting services, we implore you not to cut OT and speech for children like my son. He currently attends St. Patrick's, but he has OT and speech through the district. So with the budget crisis, I implore you not to do that because it helps him become a better student. His writing and his executive functioning have drastically improved as a result of your services that you provide, which we're very grateful for. So go ahead, Mason.
What do I say, Mama?
Tell him.
So that's why I just wanted my teacher to come back. I just really miss her. She's really good to me.
Oh.
Really nice. So
her name is Miss Megan.
Miss Megan. She's our teacher
at Centerville Elementary.
At Centerville Elementary.
Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate your input.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
That was his first time ever.
He was amazing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Kenya Martinez, and I'm here actually wearing 2 hats tonight. I'm here for the Coalition for Students with Disabilities, once again bringing up our special education audit and the recommendations that were made by the Great Schools Council. I know that we are working, the coalition is currently working with Dr. Taylor as well as members of the special education team to make sure that the recommendations are actually implemented. The other hat that I'm here for is as a parent with a student at Sacramento New Technology High School. We currently do not have an RSP teacher on staff. We started school August 13th and have had subs come between that time and now. So I am asking the board to please pay attention to this dire situation at my son's school. Not only that, we've also had subs for math. Currently, we have 35 students not receiving Math 2 and Math 3. So I would like the board to please address this situation as soon as possible. I currently sent a resume of someone who is certificated and can serve as our current RSP teacher and possible VP. I've sent that to our special education director. So I would like that person to be expedited as soon as possible and placed in that position. Granted, she's vetted. And I just want to say this on a personal level. I work my behind off. I do not get paid to do what I do. I am tired. I function on 2 to 3 hours sleep every evening. All you lovely people get paid to be here. I don't. Education is my passion, not just for my children, because what I do here doesn't actually benefit my children. It benefits everyone else's children. So I implore you to take this seriously, what I'm saying to you. We have 215 students at New Tech who need an RSP teacher and a math teacher today.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Lachey Lewis. I'm a social work supervisor, and I'm currently pursuing my doctorate degree in educational leadership for social justice. My dissertation topic is on LCAP, looking specifically at support services for foster youth. I will be sending out a survey and just looking for you guys' participation.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your research. Ian?
Hey, good evening. President Ryan, I'm sorry, Superintendent Aguilar, board members. Ian Arnold on behalf of SEIU Local 1021 and also the consortium of unions representing 4 of the 5 unions doing business with the district. Without getting into upcoming agenda items, we just wanted to let you know that when it comes to the time for organizational reports, we will all be waiving our time limits in order to allow Richard to speak for all 4 of the consortium organizations. We'll probably still have some comments when item 8.3 comes up, but particularly for the members of the press who are here who might want to leave early, we will have an announcement or, when it comes to the organizational reports. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Mac Worthy is my name. I'm here pertaining to safety on school grounds. Safety and security. I told you what I told you when I first talked to you. When you put together, you ain't said one time that you put together your plan. Have you? Come to the public. This woman can't put no plan together for you. She only the president of the board. You put yours together, because I see where her head at. Downtown, not here. We need people here going to see these babies getting a proper education. Michelle, kicking them out, going to college. Why can't we use what she's using up at Sac High in the school district? Why does she got so many going to college and we ain't got nothing going to college here? You got a problem here. You can't. As of tonight, state of California, take the school district into receivership. We've seen too many dollars lost. What does the parallel black board do here? But other than collect a check? What do the NAACP do here other than collect a check? Those are the seeds plant for racism here in this town. That's how it's downtown. Hiring people. You know what went on with hiring people. We have Hispanics working slave labor, and you're going to tell me you got $31 million in TOT tax? Those are Hispanic people. They deserve more. But ain't nobody saying a word here. It's time to wake up, people. It's coming. You can like me or you don't like me. I could care less. I'm a Donald Trump fan, and once we get that boy on Supreme Court, this stuff coming back. We can take Michelle's school and show Brown versus Board education was a lie. She got 60% black babies. How are they learning? I got a grandson bring me 4 E's home every semester. What is she doing? What are you doing here? Expel babies, the baddest babies in school, black babies. We know when black babies, boys are going to school, still wetting their britches. Second grade, couldn't count from 1 to 100, didn't know the ABC. Where's the parents? Babies had babies, reason we got a problem in our black community. We really don't have a black community. It's at large. One spot here and one spot is over there. Wake up. Send this thing to receivership.
Thank you.
And it may get something going.
Is that the end of our public comment?
No more public comments.
Moving on to item 8.0, public hearings. Item 8.1, the public hearing of Resolution 3037, resolution to convey utility easement entitlements to the Sacramento Municipal Utilities District for the Central Kitchen. Our staff member Kathy Allen presenting.
Good evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, members of the board. In accordance with Ed Code Article 15, we are required to allow the public an opportunity to comment anytime the district intends to grant an easement or dedicate real property to another public entity. In this case, we are talking about an access easement for SMUD at our 3101 Reading Avenue property, which is where the central kitchen is going to be constructed in order to provide power for that facility and the neighbors in the area. And for future, we have to did some work for them within our property, and they require an easement with which to access their lines and do some repairs if needed down the road. This time we open up a public hearing and accept public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on item 8.1?
No public comments.
Questions from board members? We have no questions from board members. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
The item is on the consent. This is simply the public hearing.
Jay, you jumped the gun. Okay, so this is an information-only item. It looks like we have no questions from board members. Thank you, Kathy. Item 8.2, public hearing on 2018-2019 Local Control and Accountability Plan revisions, which will be presented tonight by Vincent Harris and Kathy Morrison. Vincent, are you the only one presenting this evening?
He was going to join me, but I think I can. I'll start the presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, Board Member Superintendent Aguilar. It's my pleasure this evening. Vincent Harris is a part of our Continuous Improvement and Accountability team to share with you tonight the LCAP public hearing that's required in the process of approving revisions to the LCAP. In terms of our objectives for this evening, the focus is really updating based on some technical revisions that came from the Sacramento County Office of Education, and then we're adding a few items to the LCAP to meet requirements of the Every Student Succeeds Act, local educational plan requirements. And then, of course, we'll open the end of this presentation to the public hearing that's required as a part of the approval process. The actual LCAP revisions will be approved at the next board meeting, October 18th. In terms of technical revisions, the process of the LCAP is that we actually, of course, submit to the Sacramento County Office of Education, and then from there, we actually start a conversation with them in terms of revisions. And so they review the district's LCAP and provide feedback in terms of making sure the document is, of course, compliant with the education code and what have you, but also presents in the best way possible based on their best practices. What's important to note is that all of their corrections were classified as not substantive and did not require board approval. In terms of, several of the things that they mentioned were about correcting some formatting errors, including year-end data points as appropriate, because as you'll remember, we presented the LCAP before the end of June, and so there were some data points that were updated, and then also providing some additional detail in parts of the LCAP as well. In terms of other revisions to the LCAP, California Ed Code also allows the governing board to adopt revisions to the LCAP during the period in which the LCAP is in effect. And so basically, this opportunity to create the revisions is actually a natural part of the education code process. And of course, tonight's public hearing is to take additional feedback. One thing that is important to note in terms of a new process is that in applying for federal funds, basically there's been a change in which now the LCAP is really now seen as the fundamental document for districts to have all of their funding recognized, both federal and state funding. And so basically we are making our revisions to be in compliance with that. And so those revision points really do include adding actions funded by federal dollars to the LCAP for 2018-2019 school year, which basically brings us into compliance with the going forward of making the LCAP kind of the document for all district funding going forward. This just gives you a sense of some of the things that we are putting in terms of some of the modifications, in terms of class size reduction, academic intervention at Title I schools, and some professional learning in enrolled languages, social science, VAPA, physical education, and health. In terms of the milestones, as I mentioned, tonight is our public hearing, and then the adoption of these revisions will take place on the consent agenda for the October 18th board meeting. And with that, I'll turn back to the board for the public hearing.
Do we have any public comments on this item?
We have 2 public comments. Mac Worthy, followed by Liz Guillen.
Good afternoon, pal. I'm going to do the best I can in 2 minutes. You need 5 hours because we see a lot of garbage on here that I see downtown on Tuesday night. Oversight. When you appoint people that was oversight, they don't even know accounting. So how can they follow the money? You don't have that here. When you go back and look at the people in Sacramento, not only blacks across the board, where's your accounting? Where's your business administration people out there in the community? You don't have them. Because when the government owns this town, you only have to work to go to school to pass the test. Now, when the mayor said the grant come for babies to go to college, be aware. The city takes off the top. That's taking the cream off the top, put it in gym funds, and we don't know where the money goes from there. Accountability means for every dollar spent, we must trace that dollar. When you ask the city downtown and even this district, say, now you put some money in the bank, what the interest made? They don't tell you. That's stealing. Deposit and investments are 2 different worlds. Go to the accounting world. What you're investing in and what's your intent of return. Get out of bonds. Nobody mentioned the trust fund downtown until I mentioned the trust fund. Where were they? Because they was in parade with spend all the money before it goes somewhere else. This district is in a bind because of cityhoods, redevelopers. League of California City lobbied to move your tax dollar. I can challenge people from Gerald Brown all the way down to the school district. He took that money from Oakland. And this is what your mayor got intent of doing here. The reason he comes to the school district. If you're going to be a superintendent, run this district yourself, not the mayor. Run this district yourself. Because, see, the thing of it, you tracking the money. You can't track the money when the city taking the cream off the top. All that property that the city got, they ain't paying tax on. That's y'all's tax base. What happened to it? League of California said lobbied. That's when your mayor was over there taking the money. But where is the jobs? Where is the tax base? They're holding that property to sell it or give it away to sell developers. How many developers' profit is left in this town? Go take a seat. Take a look at it. It's not there. $10 million in performing art, and you move that money to design.
Your time is up. Thank you so
Wake
much.
up, people.
Our next public comment, Ms. Guillen.
Good evening, Liz Guillen with Public Advocates. I really appreciate the transparency that's being demonstrated by having the revisions presented in one hearing for adoption at the next hearing. I do want to point out, though, that while some of these are considered technical by the Sacramento County Office of Education, they're pretty important. And they're important for transparency, and they're things that folks both on the LCAP and in specific communities would want to know about. So just, for example, on the last page of the list, where it says increased and improved in that bottom box, $9.8 million of supplemental and concentration funding is being distributed to school sites. And the way the district has traditionally indicated how those are to be used for increase and improvement is to give examples.
Mhm.
I know the district is working hard to align their school site council single plan for student achievement process to reflect that. I don't think that it's quite there yet, and I know that it's an issue among some of the board members as well as specific communities who want that process to be more aligned. This is a perfect opportunity to take hold of this and really work that out. Also, number 52, or the page number 52 to above, what are your plans to reestablish the CAC? These are things that we know the community is asked about, so while they are technical, I hope that the answers that are provided can be lifted up more as opposed to buried in this list and in the LCAP, which of course is a difficult document. And part of that is because the district tries to be as transparent as it does. But unfortunately, it will take help getting people to get to the specific tidbits that they want. Thank you very
Ms.
much.
Guillen. We appreciate your feedback and continued advocacy. Item 8.3, the public hearing and approval of the 2018-19 adopted budget revision. Dr. John Quinto.
Good evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, board members. I'm here to give you an update of our 2018-19 budget. Before I get started, I'd like to first introduce two folks that come from the Sacramento County of Office. If I couldn't have Ms. Tammy Sanchez stand up and be recognized. And our Fiscal Appointed Advisor, Ms. Terry Riley. So just real quickly, we had a three-step process for our disapproval. If you recall, the budget that we approved on July 1st went to the county. It was disapproved because we didn't hit our minimum 2% reserve in our outlying years. So we went through a three-step process, and here to bring you an update of that. That resulted in us being appointed a fiscal advisor. Her role, that was Ms. Shryland, her role is to come in and review our budget, kind of comb through it, and kind of look for inaccuracies, things that maybe we didn't catch. Just clarifying our assumptions, our average daily attendance, things that an auditor would catch. So with that being said, her role is she's not here to tell or direct the district in any regards what to cut or reduce, but I do get to rely on her experience, which I very much appreciate, and glean some information from her. But anyway, so she's been very vital in helping us along in our process. So the summary, after working alongside, our team's been feverishly combing through our budget, and the fiscal advisor sits and kind of combs, helps us with that. But I can tell you that August 22nd, we got a disapproval letter from the county. In that disapproval, there was a $22 million shortfall, $40 million in the outgoing year. That has been revised, and I'll take you through that. The revised amount that presenting tonight is $28.5 million. And then there's an additional 19.5 for a total of 48 for 2021. That is the amount that is needed to be reduced in order to maintain our state mandated 2% reserve. One of the things we found, I think, in the June 21st budget presentation, you had a slide that showed you that our salaries and benefits were 81 cents on the dollar. Actually, after our team combed through that, we looked at our unfunded, our unrestricted general fund. We found that to be 89 cents for salary and benefits. Of that 89 cents, 64% of that is salary. Our benefits are, my eyes aren't working, so it's the rest of that. Thank you.
36%.
Thank you. My contact. I think it's important to note where we come from. History is always really good. We started deficit spending in 2017-18, last year. You can see the circle amount's 12.8. So this just didn't start this year, it was last year. But the board, you've done a really good job of having high reserves. It's helping you get through this economic uncertainty, which is what that's there for. So we have a little time to right the ship. But here was the original 22 million in 1920 and then 40 million in 2021. So how did we get to the 28.5 million that we showed previously? We started off with the 22, which is the red bar on the far left. We found $13 million. I say we, actually, with the great work of Ms. Ryland. She's looking for some discrepancies. Much like our colleagues, you look at 3-year expenditure trends, and she found a discrepancy of how we budgeted for our students with special needs. And when she did the projections on that, and our team kind of looked at the expenses, we found that those were under budgeted. With that, we had to true up our budgets from the June adoption. So you have 13, 11, 13. Got to go back. And then the 3 is from the true up from the June budget adoption from the Senate. So we had one-time funds that went down. We got $384. We ended up $184 for ADA. But we did get an increase in COLA. But you add that all up, it added up to actually our target number grew to 35 million. That was reduced to the 20.5 by some of the reduction was done in the June 21st board adoption that came forward. There was elimination of the summer school at that time. These are some of the things that moving forward we were able to identify, so it came out to $7.2 million. So going back to the slide, we were at 35 million. Then we came back, reduced that by 7.2, which leaves us about 28.5 million as a target number. So the updated target amount is 28.5, and then 48 total, but that's 19.5 actually for the second year. Wanted to pick kind of our history here back in 13, 14 as we grew. You saw that our revenues were higher than our expenses. One of the things that's happened in Sacramento City is you've had declining enrollment. And so as that's happening, you have your expenditures increasing. All your expenditures. You have like students with special needs who not encroachment, but we're supporting them. You have other expenses that are increasing. So as the revenues start to flatten out as they fully fund Proposition 98, there was no capping of costs or expenses or of looking at those, and so they finally crossed in 16-17, which started the structural deficit. Our gap was 12.9 last year. It'll be 34.4. It'll grow to 43.4, and ultimately 49 is what our predictions are. You have to have a cash management plan. You kind of do it at home. Kind of toward the end of the month, you probably start looking towards your bills, and maybe you don't go out for pizza. It's kind of like that in the business office. I got to make sure there's enough money to be able to make the accounts payable. We average about $46 million a month. I got to make sure there's enough cash to pay our people, be able to maintain our programs. With that being said, this is a preliminary look. We were scrubbing the numbers today. This is kind of a moving target. To be frank with you, we got till October 8th, and I think that's maybe a conversation the superintendent can have with the superintendent of County of Education, Sacramento County of Education, because it's a very short window to do a lot of work, and you want to do it right. And So it's a preliminary look. I just want to give this urgency. If we do nothing to stop the expenses or to increase revenue, we're going to run out of cash. This preliminary look has us running out of cash on June 30th. Have an illusion of integrity. I don't want to put my name to that. It's kind of our back of the neck and real, just quick, just something to give to the county. You know, we're looking at this, but we still need to scrub the budget. We need to true those up, and we'll come back with you as to something that's more exact. But I want you to keep that in the back of your mind that we won't be able to hold this ship afloat forever. And I'll come back with a more true-up number, but I think it's important that you understand our cash management plan is vital. At this point, we're kind of gone through steps 1 and 2, and now we need to identify viable options as we look toward righting our ship and making us having a long-term fiscal sustainability plan. So there's some savings not required by bargaining, and there was some early on savings identified that we discussed with the superintendent. So that was $1 million. There was some outstanding, an outstanding invoice that was brought to the superintendent's attention. So these office board reductions, the board was very benevolent. I don't know if you want to speak to that later, but I thought that awesome. We also have an OPEB contribution, which adds up to about $4.3 million. Summary of kind of our savings through October 4th. So remember, this goes back to the June 21st presentation made by Superintendent Aguilar. And when those were the $7.2 million of savings he had then. We are bringing forth $4.3 million. That's in our budget. So you'll see an $11.5 million reduction. One of the things that is of the history here was to use one-time dollars for ongoing expenses. And so here what we're trying to say is one-time contributions to reserves. So we got a rebate from U.S. Bank for $58,000. That needs to go to the reserve. That's my philosophy. My time's up. That needs to go to into the reserves with our new philosophy. And then you spend it on a one-time expense. We have an outstanding invoice that's going to bring in some $770,000. That should go to the reserve so that it could be used for a one-time expense, not something that's going to continually take a contribution from the general fund, or actually take from the general fund, should better say. So one of the good things here is we have 828 potential dollars going to the reserve for one-time funds. Some of the other things we're looking at, child development. I was working with Dr. Taylor today and her team, looking at what do we need to do to have that program stand on its own merit, because we do contribute to it. So how effective and efficient are we running that? So we're able to get down and get creative. And so we're looking at that program. And once we get our hands around that, we can bring some recommendations back to the superintendent. Our youth development, CTE. Right now, I think we're in the process of starting to scrub our position control, making sure that, that everybody's funded correctly in the right slot and things of that nature. We started a purchasing review committee. It's a committee of at least 3 cabinet members. We're reviewing all purchases to make sure, 1, they're needed, 2, that they align with the superintendent's very clear message that we purchase through the lens of equity. There are savings also that come, but they require bargaining with our labor partners. Those are to be determined, but I'd be remiss not to bring to the board one of the elephant in the room, our health care costs. And so I'm just going to put it out there. What you're seeing is a graph that shows our actual costs. And the top is the increase in those costs. So you can see in the last 3 years, it's 7%. 7%. My eyes aren't working, and I'm sorry. The last one looks like 5.7 to me. So with that being said, kind of like, so what, Quinto? Well, if you look at our COLA right above that, last year we got 1.56 in COLA, but you had a health care increase of 7.06. What do you do with that? We have, again, the 5.7, but we got a 3.7. So something has to give there. We're not doing a good job here in Sacramento with, in my opinion, and something I'm going to push really hard for is that all our sister districts have some kind of cost control on their health. We're the only district that does not. So that's going to be a critical conversation with the superintendent and bringing back some options or things we need to do, but we can't continue down this road. It's something we need to get our hands around.
Mm-hmm.
My budgeting philosophy. So I'm new here. I'm a whole month old. So I'm here to let you know as a board and as a community what you can expect from me. And I appreciate the patience from community. I know Ms. Sweat has been asking me for a lot of reports and some other folks. It's a big learning curve. I love it. I love the work here. After I get my hands around, maybe I'll get more. I'll be able to get my responses back more quickly. But so I apologize for that. The 3 steps that I have are pretty easy. They're accuracy, transparency, and equity. When I sat with the superintendent before he hired me, he wanted to make sure, one, because of his integrity, what I was getting into. Second, he wanted to know my budget philosophy. So with accuracy, I'm going to make sure there's checks and balances in the system, that they're put into place. We recently had a situation with our students with special needs. Our budget wasn't adequate for that. We didn't project well enough for that. We didn't use 3-year expenditure trends. And that was caught, actually, by Ms. Ryland. So you have some checks and balances that need to be put into place. There's going to be monthly monitoring. And come every November 1st and 2nd, they freeze the budget. That's the time I'll sit down with fellow cabinet members, and we're going to review the expenditures. We need to know where we're going to land by the end of the year. By January 1st, I should be able to predict within a 1% certainty, 1%, where we're going to be at the end of the year for labor. And if it's 89 cents of your dollar, now only you got to worry about this other piece. With that transparency, so there's no secret to what I do. I use the school services dartboard, and I use the FICMAC calculator. Put the numbers into there and it spits out a number. That's just how that works. I'm also working with Mr. Harris. I want to create what they call a dashboard that we can put up. I think we do a great job of putting up budget reports, but you got to know how to read financials. I think our community could be better served if we had a dashboard, something like a speedometer that shows where we're at, and it'd be easier for them to read. And the last thing is equity. Our local control funding formula was born to help students with needs. And the spirit behind that, with the governor's push, is that he felt that students with EL, lower economic, needed a little more support. So we get a little extra money for those students who have needs. And so it aligns very well with our vision of equity, access, and social justice. And that's the spirit behind LCFF. And so aligning our resources with the vision of the district and the spirit of LCFF, that's just who I am. That's a passion for me. The development of budgets, like I said, I'll be using school services dartboard, 3-year expenditure plans. I like to triangulate data. That's probably, I'm a researcher, so our average daily attendance, which is an assumption we'll use in the budget, will be triangulated. I'll use 3 different sources. That's another way to say that. And there'll be a lot of discussions with my colleagues about where we're at in the budget. With that being said, what happens next? Here to tell you our budget will not be approved. we still got a lot of work to do. And I credit the superintendent for being pragmatic, making sure he doesn't, he understands the impact of every decision he makes. And no, let's slow down, guys. There's some relationships and some things going on that he wants to make sure that we have access, that things are done equitably. And so I credit you, Sue, for that. It'd be easy to just come in and cut 20% across the board or do something like that. It'd be expedient, but it wouldn't be the right thing to do, not for our students. So with that being said, the county has the power to stay and rescind, and that may happen in 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm not sure what Superintendent Gordon is going to do. Time will tell. I've never been through a disapproval of a budget. I have been through helping a school district get to #1 in the state for fiscal sustainability. So I'm here to help as best I can, and we'll see what 3 weeks, what happens in 3 weeks. But I'll be here. With that, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Quinto. I know that I and my colleagues have a series of questions that we'll want to ask, but first we'll be taking public comment from our audience. Mr. Barrios, how many public commenters do we have on this item?
We have 10 public comments.
Okay, we have 10 public
we have
comments.
11 public comments.
We
Carl
are
Pinkston.
going to limit those comments to 2 minutes per person. If you can please stay at your 2-minute mark.
David Fisher, followed by Bob James, followed by Karen Sweat, Catherine Boulos, Laura Shirley, Nikki Malevsky, Ian Arnold, Thong Quang, Liz Guillen, Mac Worthy, Angel Garcia, and Carl Pinkston.
It looks like Bob and Karen Sweat from Making Sense Work are going to be taking their comments first.
Good evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and board members. My comment was really just a question for Dr. Quinto. You could either answer this evening or get to us later. We were surprised to see some large increases in the revised budget in the services contracts, and of course books and supplies were always questions about, as well as capital outlay. So we were wondering if you had some information to just let us know why those revisions occurred. They didn't seem to follow the trends that we've looked at. So that was my question.
Thank you, Bob. Karen?
Karen Sweat, Making Sense Work. There's been some questions recently about the reliability of some of the numbers in the criteria and standards. So I'd like to point out a contradiction in tonight's criteria and standards. In agenda item 8.2, it indicates that the LCAP will be information item only, public hearing, and the criteria and standards in the next item on page 169 of the budget, it says that the LCAP will be approved tonight. The date of the approval is October 4th. So that's an inconsistency. The next thing I'd like to speak to is Dr. Quinto's comment about cost control. The district currently has a fiscal management software, Escape. I believe it costs about $25,000 a year. There's amazing tools in that system. We have asked for one more that we would like to get as soon as possible. It's a period 3. It would show us all the budget information to date. It replicates the budget document. It is the way to monitor, to watch, and the FCMAT report from 2009 actually said that many districts monitor monthly, and this is the report that would enable you to monitor monthly and relate it back directly to the budget.
Thank you, Ms. Sweat. We appreciate your comments and also appreciate your continued work. Mr. Fisher.
Hi, we're going to be combining our time for efficiency. So I'm David Fisher, president of the Sacramento City Teachers Association. And as a parent of 2 students in the district and as a teacher, I'm obviously really concerned about this budget situation. I have to say I'm less concerned about the actual finances than I am about the ability of the district to manage the finances. This past Monday, leaders from SCT attended the board's budget committee because we were informed by President Ryan that this would, in quotes, be the forum for our budget conversation prior to the critical October 4th meeting. We were surprised at the budget committee meeting. It didn't seem prepared to have a real discussion about the budget. There wasn't a response to a proposal to save the district an immediate $16 million. No answers to our concerns about an additional $36 million in questionable expenditures. No explanation for why the district staff hasn't been able to schedule meetings with us and the representative from SCOE about our questions. It's worth taking just a few moments to discuss what's occurred in the recent past. I want to point out what's kind of obvious, that this crisis isn't caused by an economic downturn. Quite the contrary. It's not an external event. It appears to be self-inflicted. Must be reiterated that since 2014-15, the district's revenues have increased by approximately $100 million in ongoing revenue, an increase of 27%. In November 2017, the district's own numbers, the reserve fund, had increased to 7 times higher than the state required minimum. In March 2018, the district submitted its second interim budget with a positive certification. The budget was developed 4 months after our contract settled. In April 2018, SCOE approved the budget and concurred with the positive certification, again, after our contract settlement. Then on June 21st, 2018, Mr. Aguilar, with the board's approval, submitted a budget to SCOE that included plug numbers or placeholders that made the budget appear to be something significantly different than what it really was. And then, of course, on August 22nd, do you need her to come in? And
She's actually already reset the clock.
On October 22nd, August 22nd, SCOE rejected that budget, first time ever in Sac City's history. So rather than immediately notifying its labor partners and parents and broader community, the superintendent seemed to keep the SCOE rejection letter secret, even publishing an op-ed in the Sacramento Bee more than 1 week after the letter had been received, without even mentioning the SCOE rejection. So rather than immediately getting to work to fix the problem, district leaders seem more concerned with putting together a PR campaign. Now we're more than 5 weeks after the rejection. The district is claiming that its financial position is even worse than originally thought, even worse than the committee meeting we just attended on Monday. Nearly 3 weeks ago, the superintendent and board president Ryan encouraged Sac City community to come forward with its ideas on how to address the budget. Within 48 hours, SCTA provided a comprehensive response to the district. Our proposal was simple. 2014, according to the district's own numbers, the district has increased the number of administrators from 190 to 271, an increase of 43%. So we believe the district could save millions by turning to the 14-15 levels. The district has asserted recently that the number of 190 isn't correct. Over 5 times over a course of a couple years, the district submitted that number, 190, to SCOE and to the state of California over and over and over again. More recently, as of 3 o'clock this afternoon, we received a list that we haven't been able to go over yet that showed that 232, according to Dr. Quinto, 232 administrators were in 14-15. So where did the 190 number come from? It came from you guys. At least 5 times, like I mentioned, that was submitted to the county as the number of administrators. In fact, going back to 2012 and 13, the district had 173 administrators, and facing budget shortfalls reduced that number to 166 in 13-14. So let's just take it at face value. Even if you had 232, that's adding almost 40 administrators, even on your own numbers, as of 3 o'clock today. That's $8 million right there. In the meantime, the district's population of students has remained pretty much even. So now facing heavy criticism as well as an independent verification of the district's spending heavily on administrators by Philip Reese and the Sacramento Bee, the district is saying this number is wrong. It appears the district has now challenged its own numbers as being inaccurate. Go figure. The other thing the district is saying is that the administrative cost rate is low, a claim once again refuted by Philip Reese and the SAC-B. The CDE, the California Department of Education, defines administrative costs as general management costs. That's
David, I just wanted to let you know you have 1 minute and 15 seconds
you.
left from the combined time.
An extended cost program, but do not have a direct relationship to services to students in the program, such as chief business officer, advisory counselors, equipment used for administrative duties, HR-related costs such as fingerprinting and job postings. This is a small portion of the larger administrative expenses incurred by the district. This is in no way a measure of how many administrators are at the district office or how much money is spent there. Additionally, we have proposed that no employee of the district should be paid more than the Governor of California. We think it sends the wrong message to our broader community when our superintendent is paid 60% more than Jerry Brown. In closing, we have offered to meet with administrators, SCOE representative, and even Mayor Steinberg to address the district's budget problem without adversely impacting our students. To date, the district has refused to accept our offer, but it still stands, and we're hopeful the district will take us up on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Our next public comment.
Nikki Malevsky from the Sacramento City Teachers Association, and I just wanted to point out that we finally received the 1819 organizational chart for Sac City Unified after an information request. And just looking up these job descriptions, I found that 27 of the job descriptions in this new organizational chart was created after 2014. And that doesn't include ones where you hired multiple people into the same job description, doubling what you'd had before in those areas. And I wanted to point out that, a decade ago, when this district had more students than it has now, we managed with it was interim superintendent Susan Miller. We had a deputy superintendent / CFO. We had 6 associate superintendents. Now, in 1819, with less students served, we have 1 deputy superintendent, 7 chiefs, and 8 assistant superintendents. I think there's a lot of room to focus finances on our classrooms. Thank you.
Ms. Malevsky. Our next public commenters, and they will be speaking together. And how many cards were submitted for them? I want to be fair, so I'm giving equal time to them as I did the previous combined group.
6, I believe.
We'll be brief.
Okay, so 6 submitted cards, so you have 12 minutes.
We're not going to take all 12 minutes.
Okay.
Ian Arnold on behalf of SCIU Local 1021. The consortium will have a much more detailed response during item 11.1,
okay.
Which will be in about an hour and 20 minutes for the press folks, so they stick around. As part of the classified employee bargaining unit, we're part of the consortium with other district bargaining units because we believe that all of us, the students, the families, the employees in the district, all will be better off if we work together to find solutions to the district's budget. As school employees, we work every single day committed to maintaining the best school climate and environment for our students. And as part of the consortium, we understand that ongoing savings is what is going to be needed to allow the district to achieve financial solvency in the long term. One area where we can achieve meaningful ongoing savings without any negative impacts is by being smart about our choices on health care coverage plans. We know we can maintain quality level of health care coverage for all of our employees while securing cost savings. These types of savings are extremely important for us because they will allow us to have more money to serve our students and prevent cuts to positions vital for healthy school climate. We are the school employees that keep our schools safe and clean and the grounds maintained. Because of our work, schools are safe and healthy environments for our students to learn. During deep budget cuts a few years ago, many of our coworkers were laid off, including most of the custodial and plant manager positions. Our school campuses were filthy and unsafe for students. Indeed, the health department actually closed some school sites for several days at a time. Teachers could not focus on teaching because they had to worry about cleaning trash, bathrooms, and even student vomit. Classified employees play a vital role in the educating our children by ensuring they have a positive, healthy school climate, but are often overlooked. We're here to ask that you don't blindly balance the budget on the backs of the people responsible for maintaining a safe and healthy environment at every school. I do better off the cuff. If I try to read, I do it wrong. And finally, to let you know that we are here and we're ready to partner with you, the board, the staff, and all the other bargaining units to have a budget that works best for everyone, starting with our children, because if we don't do that, we're all going to fail. Thank you, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, everyone who's come forth. Our next public comment.
I know that there's 9 minutes, 50 seconds left on the clock. I won't be taking too much time.
You're going to use the rest of that.
Thank you. I appreciate Dr. Quinto's reference earlier about the righting the ship. I believe this is the Titanic, and you folks up there have life jackets for yourselves, but I hope you have some for the teachers and students as well. Mr. Aguilar, members of the school board, I wish I were standing here under different circumstances to offer you kudos and congratulations for a job well done. I wish I could give you an A+ for your performance to date. Unfortunately for students, families, and teachers of this district, I cannot say these things. You accepted this post with full knowledge and understanding of the challenges and difficulties confronting the district. Please accept responsibility for the state of affairs we are now facing and realize that you and your management staff do not suffer personal consequences from budget cuts. Those feeling the consequences of your mismanagement and lack of efficacy are the families with children that are enrolled in district schools and teachers and site staff. As a taxpayer, American citizen, father, husband, and immigrant, I am ashamed that you were selected to lead the Sacramento City Unified School District. Leaders lead by example. What example have you set for others? How to mismanage the school district's budget and promote malfeasant policies? You now have an opportunity to right a wrong, to prove to students, parents, teachers, and others that you are capable of honoring your commitment to furthering education rather than furthering your own interests at the expense of students. As a start, I suggest you heed the budget cuts proposed by the SETA and avoid laying off teachers and cutting programs that would hinder, not help educational goals. Moreover, a needs and efficiency study should be implemented to identify and prioritize areas that can be cut first, with an emphasis on protecting teachers, site staff, and programs that are necessary to educate our children. In other words, administrator and bureaucrat salaries should be looked at first before laying off teachers. Difficult and trying times such as these demand leaders who demonstrate character, integrity, and competence. Sometimes this calls for personal sacrifice of yourself and your management staff. Put the needs of students and teachers. I believe I have the 9 minutes left that wasn't taken up. Thank you. You have a second chance to make amends and prove to yourself and the district that your proclamation of championing equity, access, and social justice for all students is not merely hollow rhetoric, but holds real meaning.
I will remind you, as you said, our children
You
are
earn
watching.
more than $300,000 a year, not counting benefits. I'm not finished. You can keep asking.
Okay, sir.
That's $100,000 more than Governor Brown. Is that considered equitable?
The mic's not working. And we didn't get your name for the record, sir?
I have his information.
Okay. Mr. Pinkston, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carl Pinkston with the Black Parallel School Board. I first of all want to say to the accounting office and the proposal for their philosophy to do cost control, something I've been advocating for many, many years. I was 20 years as an accountant. That's number one. I'm glad that it's now happening because I think Karen Sweat has demonstrated over and over again there has been cost overruns as well as unspent funding. But the community and parents are very concerned about this budget. And a couple of things that I just want to bring to your attention that is of great concern to both to the community and to parents who have kids in this district. One is that I'm not a special education specialist, but what was shown on the screen, and I think others will speak to it, is that there has been there have been too much expenditures for special education. Parents and community have not seen the kinds of programs and services in special education, so we don't know what they're spending, this district is spending money on as it relates to special education. There's a gap. There's a gap in terms of concern about Are we going to keep existing program, but also you have a problem of academics and other issues, suspension, in terms of will we be able to propose new programs, new services in the future in LCAP. There's a problem in terms of restricted and unrestricted funds, and in terms of the presentation, which wasn't clear to me. And then there was a gap in terms of if there's restricted funds as it relates to the youth development department and programs for youth. Generally, those are grant funding. They generally do not come from the LCFF. I think there was one year that we had to set aside some funds for that. But the concern is, will we have that in the future? And then the last but not least, we really need to think about this budget in terms of what this district priorities is.
Thank you, Mr. Pinkston. Ms. Garcia.
Hi, good evening, Superintendent, Board President, and Board members. My name is Angel Garcia, and I'm from the Coalition for Students with Disabilities. I'm not a budget expert, but I'm a born and raised Sacramento community member and parent that cares about this community. I realize that some tough choices need to be made, and there's a lot of folks at the table that impact those decisions. I also want to say that we are all only here because of kids. Mm-hmm. Let's make a commitment to prioritize the kids. This is not about the adults. Let's make the kids first. I also want to remind the board and district staff that special ed students have individualized services and a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. That means you just can't cut services. The way families feel now is the district feels that our kids encroach services for other general ed kids. Our kids are general ed kids first. These are their civil rights. If you're looking to save money, it's more important than ever to implement best practices to increase our outcomes for students with disabilities. Inclusion should not be a bargaining issue left to the adults. What this means is swift action needs to happen to ensure equity, access, and social justice for these students is more important than ever. Educational opportunities and educational access is critical to the success of youth with disabilities, and we know from much of the literature that the jobs of the future require technical education, skill training beyond high school. We need to make sure that we give the kids these opportunities. California has an overall graduation rate of about 83% in 2017, but only 66% of the students in California with disabilities graduated. In Sac City Unified, 57%. So I want to know, how are Medi-Cal reimbursements utilized in the budget? So we talk about encroachment. Well, where's that money going, like Mr. Pinkston said? Our kids, we have a lot of them on Medi-Cal, and we're getting reimbursements for occupational therapy, speech, you name it. I want to know where that money's going to.
Thank you, Angela.
Solutions
if you can
are
please wrap
keep
up your
students in the
remarks.
SDC. I'm sorry. I'll leave you my solutions in writing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Garcia.
Mac, with the accounting, that's how you lay out finance. But when you took that to the neighborhood, did you take it in that form? To all neighborhoods and what he laid out here? Did he get a report back here to this board to what he told the neighborhood? You was elected to represent, not to lead. You know leaders, your representation. That's why they gave you consent to be on this board. When he talked the oversight, where was the oversight report back on? What is that? Where is the accountability report back on? How many families understood deficit? 48 to 58% of the people don't even understand deficit because they don't even got the money to talk about a deficit. Then we talk about the gap between the deficit and money. They don't even know what you're talking about. Will that explain to them? How many people? We'd like to see how many people sign in on those things and what their addresses are. Then we look at cash management. People don't play with cash. Somebody made some interest if that was cash. Somebody made some interest because that money was deposited. Do you have a safe? Superintendent, do you have a safe here or was that money deposited? That money was deposited. You had no safe. What did the community recommend after you gave a presentation? Where is that report? You don't have no report, so you ain't done nothing. You have lied to the people upside down. You continue to lie. You know the money ain't here. How many people ask you what is the question about spending money that you ain't got in those neighborhoods? We like to say that, people. That's transparency. Educate the people. That's been our code of meetings, trying to educate the general public. You got to know something about business to deal with the political arena. Follow the dollar. That's all you got to do. Because dollars don't lie. Those numbers will not lie. But when you put them out there the way that we see downtown, and the same thing here, you got a problem, people. And I'll say again, state, take this district in receivership now.
Thank you. Ms. Guillen?
Good evening, Liz Guillen with Public Advocates. I was actually had a slightly different reaction when I read the articles from the SACB and received the updates from the emails since I signed up to get them. That's because I take people at their word. I'm actually pretty hopeful. But hearing tonight from various stakeholders, it's real clear that your credibility is at stake. And people are not believing the numbers that you're using to make the decisions versus the numbers that, say, the union or other parent groups or parents of students with disabilities might be using. And my recommendation is that when you do go out into the community, that you be ultra hyper transparent, and that you use the systems that you have and that you've invested in to share the information and the underlying information that you're using and what those source documents are. There are people in this community that have been watching for many, many years who understand, and once you gain their trust, I think that you can go far and work on behalf of what's best for students. Of course, the language that you use is important, and I understand very much why parents of students with disabilities are upset when the term encroachment is used. We all feel that way, that our student, no matter how they're labeled, their needs should not be encroachments. And that's just a dollars and cents kind of vocabulary. I understand that.
Thank you, Ms. Guillen. If you can conclude your remarks. Thank you.
We have one last comment from Kenya Martinez.
Ms. Martinez?
Just to piggyback on what my fellow member from the Coalition for Students with Disabilities was asking, how are medical reimbursements utilized in the budget? Some solutions: keep students in special day classes at the same school, K through 6, which will reduce transportation costs. Provide opportunities for students at least ages 16 and over. Last summer, they stopped the workability program in the summer, so apply for grants. Encroachments: our kids are in the general ed, our general ed kids first. Apply for grants with the CDE, DDS, DOR that apply to special education students. Ensure students are placed in the least restrictive environment with appropriate supports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comments at this time?
No additional public comments.
With that, I'm going to open it up to board member comments. First, we have a comment from board member Pritchett.
Thank you, Dr. Quinto, for your presentation, and I want to tell you that I appreciate the long hours that you've been putting on pouring over this budget, and that your staff have been working on this. Obviously, all of us in this room are dismayed that we're in this situation again, and we're looking at ways that we can fix it. Over the recent days, I would say probably within the last 2 days, there's been a heightened alert or awareness, I should say, of what's happening in our district. Can you just give us a synopsis of how we got in this position? And because this didn't happen overnight, it didn't happen this month, it didn't happen over the last year. Can you just kind of give us a synopsis of that?
I think I can. I think we have a slide that kind of depicts that. First, I want to give thanks to our fiscal team. They're the ones working tirelessly. I consider myself a coach. They've been working all weekend long, working on things. We're working right up till just before the board trying to get documents in. So I want to give them a shout out. I can tell you with LCFF, just looking at the overall 1,000-foot view, my board member, my viewpoint is your revenues outpaced your expenditures. So something happened when that green line crossed the red line. So what was going on there? So I haven't done the digging yet. We've been working with SCOE and the Fiscal Adviser, trying to understand how I move forward. I haven't taken the time or had the time to look back and comb through that crossover, that tipping point. We have a tipping point. It's right there. So I'll take the opportunity to do that. But right now, I think you can't change the results, as my father always said. But son, learn and get better. So part of this process will be where we were at. I can tell you preliminarily, we were using one-time funds to pay for ongoing expenses, grants. That was a practice here. So what do you do when they come due? Well, then, like in between March and July, you added them to the budget, so that pulled from general fund. So anything that's increasing expenditures, again, I'm going to hit home your health costs. You've seen 3 major increases over the years. That's going to be part of that green. You saw an increase in our support for students with special needs. We had a person come up here, and my grandson's got special needs, so my heart kind of goes out for that. And the expense is what it is. We get so much from the state. We just have to make up the difference. The education is a right, and they have a right to education as well. So that is increasing. So you have increases in health. You have increases in labor because of the one-time expense. Now they're encroaching on the general fund, whatever those programs may be. You have labor agreements that are coming into play because they increase. You have mandated costs with STRS and PERS so it's multifactorial. So to put values to those, all I can tell you is all those is one, cross that line.
You had mentioned grants. Can you tell us a little bit about the grants that you say have come to an end?
I think they were presented on June 21st, some of those that were coming to the end, and that's why the big gap. That's the story. John, what's going on with us? How come we just went upside down? Those grants were coming due at the end. I wish I had the slide, but they were put back into the budget. And some of those were the, if I can get there quickly, you had, I can't see them up there. Superintendent, can you help me with some of those grants?
Yeah, we had some that funded our youth development, our induction programs, and others, and we can certainly give the board a summary of those.
My apologies. I'm still catching up on some of the history of us. My work's been generated toward moving us forward. So
I think you'll recall, Member Pritchett, one of our largest grant funds went to support our youth development, 21st Century Scholars Grant that we lost that covered much of our summer programming, our after-school programming, and the board had to make a decision that those were not, in fact, value-added, that those were essential to ensuring that our students reached their potential and were able to have a safe space. And so we did fill that gap when that significant grant disappeared.
Thank you for that explanation. And I do remember I was just looking for education to the community because, like I said, there is a heightened awareness.
Thank you.
Do we have other board member questions and comments? We have a comment from student member Halbo, followed by a comment from board member Hanson.
I'd like to echo the comments made by many members of the audience. The budget needs to put students first. That being said, a majority of the students in our district don't know what's going on with the budget or don't only know what they overhear from their parents or their teachers. I know that this is in no way a priority, but if it would be possible to get some type of simplified electronic or physical PowerPoint presentation or summary of the issues that we are having so that I can work with student groups and schools to inform the students of the district of what is going on and how it will affect us directly and indirectly, that would be awesome.
That's an excellent request, student board member Halbo, and we will do our best to get that to you expeditiously. Board member Hanson. No. Board member Minnick.
Thank you, President Ryan. So I just had a couple questions just to clarify. The first of all, I want to thank you for the amount of energy you're putting in this, and I also appreciate the acknowledgement that this was a long process that got us to this point, and like Member Pritchett said, this was not something that happened overnight, and that it can't be corrected in this 30-day window that we were given. And rather than force something that was going to be even more painful in the short term than need to be, you're taking the time to really look at what's the best way to budget moving forward to make sure the kids are always first and foremost, because it would, I think that maybe historically we've use the same process over and over again with a few tweaks here and there. And this is our opportunity now to really embrace budgeting the right way and making sure our kids are always put first. And so as scary as this time is and as frustrated as I may feel, I'm feeling optimistic that that we have the right people in place to change how we do things, and so I did want to say that up front. So I appreciate your attitude toward this and the superintendent and the whole team. A couple questions. These aren't numbered, so I'm going to just have to show you. So there was this slide around special ed. The cost, the contributions, expenses, and stuff for special ed. What I heard from your presentation and in conversations prior was that the expenses for special ed when budgeted were underestimated. When we saw that expenses were continually rising, but what was put in the budget was something quite a bit lower. The allocation was quite a bit lower than what should have been expected. Is that a fair assessment?
I've had a chance to converse with the superintendent and dug a little deeper. Mm-hmm. Typically, you use budget line theory, so you roll over budgets like in February or March. So when they rolled over the budget, the value that was placed in the budget for the following year was extremely low. In fact, it was $113 million. The expenses from the previous year was $114 million. There wasn't a check and balance in the system to go back and look at that. So those are the facts. The rollover budget at 113, our expenses ended up at 114. In Ms. Ryland's work, they came in and she saw, this seems odd. Why did we budget less than the 114? She starts kind of combing through that, sits down with our folks, and lo and behold, we under budgeted our students with special needs.
Okay.
And what it had to do with some contracts that come toward the end of the year that weren't accounted for. So that I can explain the variance now or why the change, Moving forward, that's one of the things that having 3-year expenditure trends in each of your bigger budgets catch those kinds of salient things. One of the things we're going to start budgeting through the lens of equity. Equality is just you assume what happened. Budget line theory assumes what you did last year was correct. So you roll it over to next year and you just add 5%. Or it's easy, but that's not the way the superintendent wants us to budget. We're going to do it through the lens of equity. We're going to use 3-year expenditure trends, and those kinds of under budgeting and over budgeting at sometimes will be reduced or eliminated.
So theoretically, though, even if you were doing that, you wouldn't decrease a budget line item for something if the trend had been going up, correct?
Not without good cause.
Right.
So let's make up the scenario. Let's say that you're reducing your transportation costs. I'm not suggesting we're doing anything like this. I just happen to see a bus behind you. So let's say you're reducing transportation costs because you've decided, I don't know, you're going to move your walk to school to different regions. So let's say you're going along at $10 million. That scenario plays out where you reduce $2 million, but you can explain your methodology. And so when I would come to the board and say, okay, this is why this is being reduced. You would want to present to the board and the superintendent why that reduction.
We would have a rationale for that.
Yes.
Okay, and the reason why I bring that up is just because that struck me because some of our partners in the community have said many times that your predecessor had a tendency to overestimate expenses and underestimate revenues, leading to kind of unspent money, and that we had all this extra money. But what I'm seeing in this scenario is exactly the opposite of that, where we were underestimating the expenses when really our cost to run the special ed, to support our special ed students was much higher than what had budgeted. And I just wanted to make that point because I think that there's some misconceived information out there that we had typically overestimated all these expenses to create this buffer that what I'm hearing now was not necessarily the case. And so,
in this particular case, Board Member Menick, that is true.
Okay. A couple other questions I had. You mentioned when we got to whatever page that was. Increased district healthcare costs and how they're going up. You mentioned what, to quote you, you said a cost control on healthcare expenses. When you say that, are we? This is what when in terms of a cost control, are those things like a cap on what we pay? Different options in terms of healthcare benefits for employees. Are those the kind of things that we'd need to start discussing as options to cut some of those costs?
So yes, all the above.
Okay.
We are working with all but one of our labor partners, and after notifying the board of our target, I'm looking forward to sitting with them and start digging into what are those options.
And I do appreciate that Ian and the crew from SEIU, pointing this out as an option, as something that they're willing to talk about. And so, thank you for your leadership on that, because I think that what we saw in that dollar sign image is that our benefits are costing us a lot of money, and the idea that we might be able to make some relatively minor adjustments potentially for individuals that can have a huge impact on the amount of money then we have to be able to spend directly on kids, I think is huge. So I appreciate that. And then a related last question was that on that dollar sign image, you said 89% of our budget is going to salaries and benefits. And I just want to know, like, that sounds like a lot to me, right? That's 11% for everything else. But I guess my question is that normal? Like, you know, it sounds bad, but I don't want to say, oh, this is a horrible thing. If this is typical of a school district, is 89% for salaries and benefits the typical amount for a school district to be spending on salaries and benefits?
It is high.
Okay.
With what we're finding across the state with the unfunded mandates of STRS and PERS, you're seeing this value increase to try to keep up. Everybody's seeing an increase in STRS and PERS and health benefits. I come from a school district where we ran a salary benefits, we were 75 cents on the dollar.
75 versus 89?
We were number one in the state for fiscal sustainability, but you run a tight ship. It's somewhere, in my best judgment, the last reports I looked at, Katie, a couple of years ago, between 80 and 83% is probably a norm. I think it has to do with your environment, how big you are. There's multiple factors, but I, as your CBO, would want to see something closer to 80 cents.
Okay, cool. Thank you. No, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Board Member Minnick. If we can please ask our board members to keep their comments as concise and cogent as possible. We have First Vice President Wu.
Thank you, Dr. Quinto, and I hate to do this to you, but I didn't get to ask my question during the LCAP discussion, but you were going to make some some adjustments for LCAP federal funding for 18-19, 19-20, I believe it is, and I think you listed on page 6 of the slides, it says LCAP revisions. They amounted to about $2.5 million. It's not in this.
Okay.
It's in the other one. About $2.5 million additional in Title II and Title I funding total. Is that in addition to what we have accounted for already?
Those are restricted dollars.
Yes.
And what our concern is here is our unrestricted general fund. So typically it's part of all your funds, but as your Title I, II, and III or categorical grants come in, they're restricted.
But it goes into a big pot, nevertheless.
So if you get an increase, it stays there, but it's earmarked and specific to spend in a certain area. So yes, we see an increase, but it's irrelevant to the conversation of we can't use that. Again, those are one-time funds typically, and you don't use those for ongoing expenses.
Well, I was wondering where the additional federal dollars were going to come from, since they had not budgeted for an increase in the last several years. And in fact, Secretary DeVos was hoping for a 5% decrease across the board in education funding.
I would have to do some digging on that and get back to you if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Quinto. Board Member Vang, followed by Board Member Hansen.
Thank you, President Ryan. So first, Dr. Quinto, I just want to thank you and staff for doing your due diligence on combing through the budget and scrubbing it. I just have some comments, and I actually just have 2 questions. So my comment is that I think moving forward, it's really important that our school district really budget with the philosophy that all dollars really belongs to our students first. And I think given the budget situation that we have right now, I do echo my colleagues on the dais that, the situation that we're facing right now isn't something that happened overnight, that it precedes our board and even our superintendent, right? But it is our challenge to confront as a board and as a community. I think moving forward, it's going to be really important for us to be committed to finding cost savings and making cuts in a way that does not disrupt our students' learning. We need to prioritize our students first. Those dollars needs to go into our classroom. It's also important that we continue to have fair and competitive compensation packets for our employees. And when I say employees, I mean our teachers, our classified staff. We need to take care of those who take care of our students in our schools. That's critical and important. But I do believe that this board is committed to that. The comment that I do have is I've heard a lot of community advocates coming up today still having questions around our budget. A request that I would like to make as we move forward, I know that we have to submit a budget by the 8th, is for us to have community learning sessions. I think that oftentimes it seems like some of our numbers are not matching with the union or with community partners. And I think it's critical that we are working from those same numbers. And so I would like to make the request for district staff for us to have a few community learning sessions around our budget. The second question that I had was I appreciate the additional savings that you have been able to find. And if I read this correctly, given the OPEB contribution, cuts to central office, some outstanding invoices, we have a number about $11 million. But from our adopted budget from June 30th, it says that we have about $22 million of unidentified budget restriction that's needed. And so my question to you, Dr. Quinto, is that, I'm not great with math, but I know 11 million in cuts does not reach the 22. And so I want to know what's the next 28.5. So that's 11 million only in cuts, which means that that's not even close. And so I want to know what's going to happen next, given that the additional cost savings that you're presenting today is October 4th, is 11 million. It's not anywhere close to where we need to be. And so I would like to hear from you a little bit about next steps and what we need to do.
Actually, you stated two things, and if you may, let me talk to both.
Okay.
So the first one being, you talked about numbers in the community and not being on the same page in different data. It is important to know the source where you're pulling from. So I'm not up here to say that somebody's number is incorrect. As a doctor myself, I research, you put your data in front of you, you draw a conclusion. You tell somebody what your methodology is, they should be able to draw the same conclusion given the same values. So that's not to say that the information they have is incorrect. It's more of a philosophy and or a methodology or how they practice. So with that being said, I know that we recently have put on our website, we had an association, Mr. Fisher up here speaking to admin cost. They had pulled a value from our criterion standards. Those values actually come out of our second interim. So you're not done with the year yet. As a CBO, I look for what we actually spent. So a budget is a wish. You go to the board, you ask for, give me the authority to spend up to this amount. You carry that plan out. And so you snap a line a couple of times during the year, first and second interim, and see how well you're doing. But if you really want to know what you spent, you wait till your end of year and see what that is. And so the membership came forward and said, well, you got this value, 190 for administration positions. The paper says that. Absolutely it does. I have no answer for why it says that. But it does. But I do have an answer what we actually paid for at the end of the year. That's what's important to us. Because that's what we paid the salaries and the benefits, and that's what went to Calstrs and PERS. And so I say that because the paperwork or the information they have may be accurate for the time that they took it. So what we're doing our best through the website is trying to get information, and Alex is doing a wonderful job disappearing on me. Anyways, but he's doing a great job of trying to, when these things come up, tell the community, this is where we got the information using end of year actuals. So that's the first comment. The second, moving forward, what do we do? The superintendent, in talking with him, he wants to be pragmatic in his approach to this. We have no prescription as to this is what we're doing. we're working together with our labor partners. We've reached out to the community. We've talked to our staffs. We've empowered, give us ideas. I got this wonderful, Miss Karen, she sends me this stuff all the time, and I'm combing through it as fast as I can. But, it's all those ideas that come forward. The board yourself, you brought forward.
Thank you, Dr. Canto. I hate to cut you off, but we still have several other board member comments and questions. Board Member Hanson.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Appreciate the summary to date. As you mentioned, it's something a work in progress, and I think many people have said that this didn't happen overnight. Absolutely not. When I got on the board, it's been 6 years now, we had an unfunded liability of several hundred millions of dollars for our healthcare obligations because we have promised lifetime medical for our employees, which is a noble thing to do. But however, the board promised it and the union negotiated it, but they never paid for it. They just assumed it would be paid for in the future, just some magical figure that was going to happen. So I'm concerned when I see that we're going to, part of the savings is to take away $3 million out of the OPEB. I saw that on one of your savings measures. That's money that we're paying ahead into the unfunded liability to help pay for, when our current employees retire, they're going to count on having that health care. I heard a new number that I wanted to ask about. What is our current unfunded liability now for our unfunded healthcare obligations?
Out of respect, I'd like to go back and get you an accurate number. Mm-hmm. The round number is it has grown to about $70 million.
$770 million.
But let me, I need to confirm that, so if you'll allow me to get that accurate accrual report and get it back to the superintendent so you can have the accurate number.
One of the folks who spoke earlier mentioned the budget meeting that we had earlier, and at that meeting, which is earlier this week, John Borsos, who's one of the staff people at SCTA, said it's just fine to do pay-as-you-go for the future, but we're spending, I think what's the dollar amount that we're paying now for retiree health care, approximately?
I believe that, let me get back to you on that, but it's somewhere around 16. The pay-as-you-go is
16 million?
16 million.
Okay, that's the number. That's what I ballparked, I remember. I mean, that in itself, if we hadn't paid that this year, past years, other years, if we had done it properly and actually funded the commitment as we made that commitment, both, the leadership of the union that negotiated that and the school board is absolutely complicit in that as well for not having funded that, but we just promised that in the future and it'd just be magically paid for. So that's a gigantic amount of money that in itself over the last several years and this year would have us not be in this situation. Instead, we'd be having extra money to be able to
I think that's a great point, Board Member Hanson. I would liken that to paying the interest on your home and never the principal.
Correct.
You'll never own your home.
So we've got a lot of work to do with that. You mentioned earlier we had a meeting yesterday with the labor consortium of folks, and 4 of our 5 partners showed up. Who is the group that didn't show up?
That would be the Teacher Association.
So the leadership at SCTA, I know they keep talking about offering to meet all the time, but that really seems to be kind of a mythical offer, and maybe you actually would consider showing up and joining in some of these meetings. I know that we've got a group of our union employee folks who are partners in this. The district is not some of us, it's all of us. We're all going to have to be part of this together as we solve this problem. And it's the same problem that every school district is having, cities are having, the states are having, counties are having. It's nothing that's unique to us. Ours is probably a little more dramatic because of the promises we've made in the past that were not funded. The bill has finally come due on that. There's other things that have happened. Our pension requirements from the state legislature gave us a lot of extra money. I know one of our folks talked about all this extra money we have, but our pension requirements to pay to STRS went from 6% of payroll to 18% of payroll in just a matter of 3 years. That in and of itself would have solved this problem here. And that was something that was negotiated in the legislature that everyone in the room who's the labor partner knows exactly how that was done. And it was done with CTA, and the other folks cut those deals. So it's not like, this is not all connected together. This is a very politically sophisticated town, and we know how all this works. So we need to be adults in the room, remember, who are working for the children, because 1/3 of our community has students in the school that are 1/3 of our taxpayers. 1/3 of our community had students in the schools, but they've come and gone. 1/3 of our community taxpayers never had students in the schools, but we're all paying for the schools. And I think most of us thinks it's the right thing to do. It's a privilege. It's the right thing to do for society, but they also expect us to be fiscally responsible.
Board Member Hanson, do you have any final questions?
Yes, I do. And now's the time for us to do that. There was another, you had an outstanding invoice on one of the sheets. I was curious what that was. 770,000 approximately. One of the slides.
It was found, there was a requisition that came through, and it was a requisition for SCTA. And so we had done some inquiry, and what it was is their allowed release time which is by ed code, they're allowed to do that. So we looked at whether or not we had invoiced them to make sure that we were following ed code and not incurring an expense. And we found that they hadn't been expensed for 2 years. So we are correcting that, and that's the reason for that, sir.
So they probably knew they were supposed to write us a check, and they just didn't. But I appreciate that. We sent them an invoice too. So 770,000 in one-time expenditures. That will be. Look forward to getting that, because we're all in this together. You laugh as you might, but it's for our students. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Final comment, and then I have held my comments and questions to let all of my other board members speak, and I have quite a few myself. Board Member Cochran, thank you for your patience as well.
Thank you, President Ryan. I would like to say before anything else that I appreciate your head-on look at this, and that I appreciate that you are looking and digging in, particularly looking at administrative expenditures. And I know that you're just beginning this process, and it will continue. So for those of you who don't know, I am a 20-year veteran of public school teacher, and I know that our teachers are valuable. Would you please put up slide 5? It's the dollar bill. So when people initially look at this dollar bill, they're shocked, and they should be. When you look at salaries at 64% and benefits at 36%, remember this, that those salaries at 64%, those are the teachers and the on-site workers, the janitors, the custodians, the office workers that have direct student contact every day. The average teacher, aside from teaching perhaps 100 students a day, has contact with 300 students a day. That salary is part of helping our students. This is not some inflated, bloated piece of government waste. This is how we teach children in our schools. Now I have a question for you. The salary at 64%, is that a particularly large amount of the dollar bill that you would spend in a district?
I do not know that answer. As compared to our sister districts, we are part of the exercise moving forward is to understand where we're at in terms of competitive salaries, because coming from the private sector and even being in the school business for 18 years, you have to attract and retain the best. So to your point, and I concur, if it wasn't for a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Nair, in 3rd grade, I wouldn't be standing before you. And a couple of coaches. I was a chronic absentee kid and didn't speak English very well. So long story short, yes, that is a big number. I think it's industry standards closer to 80. And I think working with folks like school services, SCOE, and we're going to get our hands around, kind of benchmarking ourselves against sister districts, and I'll be able to more educatingly answer your question as to whether or not that's a good or a bad number.
So thank you, I appreciate that. But let me be specific about that question. So we show in Sac City that 64% of every dollar spent in the district is spent on salaries. Excuse me. Thank you. Member Hanson, it's not your turn. Kindly wait. President Ryan, would you please correct this member? He's interfering with me.
Board Member Cochran, please go ahead and finish your comments.
Thank you. So when looking at the dollar, my question is, I would like to know, compared to other districts, the percentage of the dollar bill salaries that are spent for teachers, how do they compare, just the salary, to the other districts in California? If you could get back to me with that, that would be fine.
Absolutely. And how you frame that's not how I wanted this slide to be depicted. So
okay.
Let me differentiate my instruction here. It's out of the 89 cents, 64% of that 89 cents is for salary. So
okay.
It's not 64% of the dollar.
Then that's fine. Then take it from the 89%. And please provide the comparison with other districts. That's fine. Thank you. So to my point, the salaries that are part of that dollar bill are some of the most important dollar bills spent in our district. When you look at the benefits, which is 36% of 89 cents, comprising this dollar bill image, this is a very high percent. And those who have been in this district a long time and have followed this district know that historically the trade-off for the teachers in this district has been a lower pay per teacher average compared to other comparable districts throughout the state. In exchange for that, they had Cadillac full, beautiful benefits. So I came from a district that had some of the, and still does have some of the highest salaries for teachers in the area. It's the Elk Grove district. When President Ryan and I came on this board 3.5 years ago, one of the first priorities was to move this board and move this district to take a look at the employee retirement benefit structure at Elk Grove. We weren't successful in those first 3 years, but we're not giving up. We're asking that this district still do that. One of the problems that we're going to face is that Elk Grove's a newer district. They were able to start this out from their inception practically and build on it over the years. But that's no excuse for us not to have a trust that is built to provide for retiree benefits. I retired last year after 20 years, and I myself am a beneficiary of this. I am covered for life with health benefits because that district planned ahead. And if you invested enough time into the district, into teaching children, you'll be able to reap that benefit. And I believe this district should work to do that as well. So I'm going to wrap up here. Member Ryan, I'd just like to point out one thing about one-time monies. One-time monies are one time that year, but grants and new investments and new monies do come back to a district. It's something that happens every year. We've been tasked not to figure that into our budget, which we're doing with great responsibility and fidelity. But I anticipate that we will have summer school next year. We will have flag football because these budgetary items will again be flush. So I'm not unhopeful about that. Finally, transparency with the budget. I think it was about 6 years ago that our community group Making Sense Worked asked to put the budget online so it could be seen on the website. And what was put up was a string of code and some code, meaning coding for budget items, and some language that you could or could not understand depending on your experience. So I'd like to laud the move of this district, particularly from the superintendent, to decipher this complex coding and to put the information up there so everyone can take a look at it and understand what we're doing as a district. We're working hard. We've been tasked with a very difficult job, and we're going to do it. Thank you, President Ryan.
Thank you, Member Cochran. I have several questions that I want to ask Dr. Quinto. I do want to begin by saying, as the parent of two children in the district, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, I am gravely aware that the decisions we make today will continue to impact my children throughout their childhood. And so I take this situation with a heavy heart, but also with the sense that this is a tremendous opportunity to do the right thing, not just for my children, but for all children in Sacramento City Unified School District. We have heard several of my board members say that these are long-standing issues that predate this board and this administration, and that we know that past boards and past administrations have relied heavily on one-time funds and grants and hoped that those funds, one-time funds and grants, would continue to materialize. I am very aware that hope is not a strategy, and that this is our challenge to confront today so that our children and families can continue to be confident that we will meet their needs, academic, emotional, and lifetime success for the future. I do have some questions that I want to cover and some specific items. So we talked about the role of SCOE, the Sacramento County Office of Education, as an independent entity coming in and acting as a neutral fiscal advisor. In my short time on the board, what I have found is consistently, and I know that this has been a source of contention with board members, we have disputed figures, we have disputed what does it mean to be an independent validating analysis. I know when we went through contractual negotiations, even a fact finder's findings were questioned. And so I want to ask, since we have our fiscal advisors here, can you confirm that your detailed analysis, line by line through the Sacramento City Unified School District's budget, verified that the numbers we have before us tonight are true?
Thank you. Good evening. I have not looked at every line of the budget. There are 55,000 lines in the budget. I've kind of cherry-picked areas that I know are the first things to review. I've looked at revenue, your biggest chunks of revenue, verified that they were adjusted to agree to the state's enacted budget, and I've looked at the special education program, starting to do, spent some time on benefits both for retirees and for active, and have data points and information on that, doing variance analysis in certain places. Just sent a list today of another dozen or so questions. Hey, what's going on? Why did this change? But so starting at this level and slowly working down to the detailed level. So no, haven't touched every line, haven't looked at every line. Looking at the big chunks. But the
analysis that you have done alongside our CBO over the last few weeks has arrived at the number we have today and is, to your best knowledge, the number that we have to work with in terms of our deficit.
Right. As far as the target, yes, okay. We did generate the target. We didn't.
So you generated the target. This was not a target that was generated by the district alone. A fiscal advisor you hired by SCOE have generated this deficit number. Thank you. Yes. I just wanted to verify that. Okay, so a few things that I want to call out tonight, because I think that the complexity of the issue is very, to me, clear tonight as we discuss the myriad issues that we have before us. A few areas that I found to be most troubling and important in understanding how we arrived at the fiscal challenges that we have today fall under the areas of special education funding. I want to talk about that. And also our contributions to Calstrs and Calpers. When I dug into the data, I was surprised when we had the revised analysis that showed that we actually had a deeper deficit than had originally been anticipated, particularly when I looked at our special education funding and the mismatch between the state revenues and the expenditures necessary to meet the needs of this critical student population, I absolutely agree with our advocates who said that these students are our students and need to be served to the best of our ability. As the parent of a special education student, I could not agree more. It is a moral and legal responsibility. And yet, there is a mismatch when I look at this year of about $80 million between what we will need to expend, many for our non-public schools, to meet the needs of the student population, and the actual state revenues. This is something that we have to address. We have to talk about it in the overall scheme of things as we grapple with this budget crisis. The second item is around the Calstrs, Calpers contribution. Obviously, we know that this is a piece of being able to attract and retain high-quality employees, and yet, if you look at the difference in contribution required in the 15-16 year through the 20 to 2021 year, it is significant. We began at a contribution level for Calstrs of about $1.7 million and then grow to a $12.35 million. For PERS, it's $5.7 million and then grows to a $25 million expenditure. This, to me, is astonishing and represents a difference of about $29 million in required contribution by this school district at the very time we're trying to be able to preserve, grow, and ensure that we are meeting the needs of students, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom and beyond. We also know that we have had, and you covered it in a detailed fashion, escalating healthcare costs. And I have to tell you, as someone who, as a child, had to rely upon state coverage, as someone who worked for nonprofits for many years and either went without health coverage or then, when I finally got health coverage, felt like I had hit the lottery, I believe in our ability to provide a high-quality health care package to all of our employees. But when we look at the escalating costs, I start to question, where is our competition? Why have we not done some of the best practices we know to be true, including adopting a health care cap, so that we are getting the best possible estimates as we're trying to negotiate our health care premiums? We also know that we have not, in the past, for whatever reason, embraced the best practice of a board policy on our fiscal reserve. We know that a practice of high-performing boards across the state is to have a board policy in place. I've heard our independent fiscal advisor say 5% is a good target. I know that when the board actually had a healthy reserve, we were criticized for that reserve. So the tension that we are going to have to acknowledge as we move forward with courage and conviction and relentless commitment to make sure that our cuts do not harm our students is understanding that we must put in place best practices like board policies that allow for a healthy reserve, not an exorbitant reserve, but something that will guard against economic downturns. These are things we all have right now as part of the conversations as we move forward. You've heard many individuals say that 30 days is not enough to develop a meaningful plan that takes into account our stakeholders' input, our employees' input, and ensures that no one entity bears the burden of these cuts on their backs. And I would say beyond that, not to just ensure that our employees don't disproportionately bear the burden of any cuts, but that our students are at the center of every difficult conversation we're having as we talk through not just the efficiencies, not just the savings that are negotiated, but cuts if we come to that place and have to be grappling with the best of the worst possible scenarios. I'm hopeful that with your leadership and Superintendent Aguilar's leadership, we will be able to see movement. And I do want to just say a few final things. We know that we've had our superintendent in this position for a little over a year. We, as a board, I know Board Member Cochran and I came on and we inherited a superintendent. We chose not to renew his contract. We inherited a CBO. We released that CBO. We have seen structural problems and budgeting philosophies that have not served our students and the district well. We now have a new CBO in place and a new superintendent with a focus on equity, access, and social justice, and a complete commitment to transparency in our budgeting process that he is willing to be held accountable to. So I would just like to close out by saying we also have data that shows that was verified that we, on average as a district, are at 4.6% of our total expenditures for our central office, which is in the mid-range of the entire region. I know that the numbers that were calculated showed an inclusion for our administrators that were principals and associate principals, and I don't want to debate that. I don't want to get into a place where we're casting stones. Instead, I want to focus on our shared commitment to students, because at the end of the day, our teachers, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our administrators are all responsible for modeling leadership and a commitment to reaching the full potential of each and every one of our students in this district. Thank you. So with that, we're going to take a vote. Do we have a motion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. The motion carries.
Preferential vote?
Oh, and our student board member, preferential vote.
Aye.
Thank you so much, Board Member Halbo. Item 9.1, credit recovery update. Okay. If we can please have those who are leaving exit the back of the room quietly so we can hear the staff presentation. Thank you so much. Vincent, if you'll please speak up and into the microphone. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, Board Member Superintendent Aguilar. I'm joined this evening with our Director of Guidance and Counseling, Christina Espinosa, and potentially our Principal of Sacramento Accelerated, Matt Niblock, to walk you through our credit recovery business process update. What I'll speak to tonight, and what we'll collectively speak to tonight, is one of the strategies we have in place to ensure all of our students have an equal opportunity to graduate. And linked to that is really this notion, as we've talked about the equity, access, and social justice guiding principle, equal opportunity to graduate with the greatest number of post-secondary choices from the widest array of options. And so as we think about credit recovery, particularly as an intervention on behalf of getting students back on track, and sometimes as an opportunity to get students into a place where they're A through G most competitive, it's really one of our bedrock district programs as an opportunity to help students make progress and graduate really in a position to fulfill the promise of their experience in high school. And so with that, I'll talk a little bit more specifically as we look at it in terms of relationship of the guiding principle. This gets at the core of one of the things we really think is important, and that's standard work processes. And so we know credit recovery work has always gone on within the district. One of our points of emphasis, though, over the last year is to be really intentional about how do we ensure that the credit recovery process happens the same way at every site and it has the availability for every student. And so we'll talk tonight about some of the standard work processes that we've actually implemented and have refined based on system feedback that we think continue to build capacity for us to ensure that credit recovery provides the best opportunities for all students in Sacramento City Unified. So in an overarching sense, credit recovery is an intervention. And as I mentioned, it's either to restore or frankly enhance a student's ability to graduate with the greatest number of post-secondary choices from a wide array of options. And so what does that really mean? You'll hear over the next several slides from Ms. Espinosa and from Principal Niblock what that looks in a very concrete type way. And so with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Principal Niblock.
Good
Good evening, Superintendent Aguilar and board members. So I'm going to speak to a couple of success stories that really symbolize the potential of online credit recovery to serve our students. So, for instance, I know this is a bit tight, this slide, a little bit condensed, but this is an example of a Rosemont student and his journey to meeting A through G requirements, restoring his college post-secondary choices. So in this case, this Rosemont student struggled with freshman English, and then pretty much online credit recovery gave him an opportunity to have a second chance at that score, in which he turned a D into a C, and thereby restored his post-secondary options with regard to the UC and CSU systems. We do have another example. This one is of particular significance to me because it is a Sacramento accelerated student, and as Mr. Harris specified, I am the site principal at Sac Accelerated, so this one's close to home. This is a young lady that we had last year, born in Mexico, came to Sac City Unified in 7th grade, ultimately got behind largely with English courses, and made her way to Sac Accelerated the summer before her senior year with 19 semester courses to graduate. That's 7 semester courses behind. She ultimately completed 2 online English courses over the summer preceding her senior year, improving on both of the grades. And then in 17-18 fall and spring semesters, she did complete 17 more courses. She graduated on time. You can see some of the other points there, but she ultimately worked closely with our excellent counselor, Yvette Akisto, completed the FAFSA, and is now, we maintain contact, is at Sac City College, 100% covered by financial aid, taking a full load of courses. This is kind of a busy chart. It's a bar chart that essentially, by color, kind of summarizes the 5,800 online courses that were completed in 2017-18 toward credit recovery. Yellow, green, and blue essentially indicates heavy usage, speaks to overall completions, and the height of the bars indicate basically efficiency, so completions per student. There's a clear variance among school sites that we can't help but observe, but by the same token, this being 17-18, we did a lot to identify best practices by that variance and are applying them this year for increased effectiveness. This chart is summative in nature. It's a good summary. On the far right, you can see the 5,821 online courses that were completed last year. It's important to note that 2,000 of those courses, 2018, were completed during the Expanded Learning Summer Program, ELSP. As of right now, 1,528 online enrollments have already been made this year. In a month of school, 413 courses have already been completed. I'm going to introduce Christina Espinoza, who will kind of speak to the underlying processes that lead to these results.
Good evening, Superintendent Aguilar, members of the board. I will just walk you through quickly. I know this is a little hard to read, but essentially this is the process by which counselors undergo in reviewing student schedules before the beginning of the school year. They go through the process of first identifying whether or not students are on track for graduation. What we've added this last year and continuing to do this year is ensuring that we're maximizing the number of post-secondary choices that the students have. And we've included also into the credit recovery process that they also target those students who are subject borderline for A through G, meaning they're 1 semester to 1 year off. So we're taking advantage of the credit recovery options right now. That's the season of work that we're engaged in. This is, again, is a very busy matrix, but essentially, as we identify criteria for graduation, if a student is 5 to 10 credits off for graduation, a summative view of credits doesn't necessarily identify for us whether or not a student is on track for graduation. So just because you graduate with you have 225 credits doesn't necessarily mean that you've satisfied each particular subject area. So we've deconstructed constructed that process to ensure we created a guide to ensure that we're able to identify students at every grade level who are deficient or are not on track for graduation by subject area. So that's very critical in intervening and identifying students early on. This is the same. This is a matrix, but identifies students who are on track or off track for A through G. So same process. By grade level, we're quickly able to identify whether or not a student is off track or on track for A through G. So these are just guides that we use and counselors use for advising. This is a high-level overview of cross-departmental collaboration. So this work requires departments and across the entire district, and different stakeholders are involved here. The first step is the enrollment process. How are we working with our, from a technical perspective, how are counselors identifying the students using the benchmarks that I just described to you? How are we enrolling them in the actual program, Accelerated Ed? And then how are we ensuring that we're communicating to families and parents and students that the importance of enrolling in these credit recovery courses? There's a lot at stake. Either students are at risk of not meeting A through G or graduation. The second body here is the progress monitoring, which is key and is where we've invested a lot of our time, both Matt Niblock and myself, in ensuring that we are working with our mentor teachers, ensuring that they are sharing best practices, and very critical as well is the communication with the principals to ensure that they're monitoring on a weekly basis the progress made in the courses by these students. And ensuring that we're deploying support early enough if they're not making progress towards completion. We don't want a student to sit in an online course, for example, for an entire semester and have made maybe only 10% progress. Like, we want to make sure that we're making allocating the appropriate supports in the classroom, or perhaps switching that student into another course. And in that piece, again, it's the instructional, if you notice, the instructional assistant superintendents play a role, and they have guided meetings with the principal so that this is on our radar at all times, and we have designated, at least for the semester, for example, 2 check-in dates. The last part is the completion. So we want to make sure, again, that we're monitoring completion of the students throughout the semester. We do have students who are completing courses before the end of the semester, so at that point, we revisit the entire process again. If a student completes, let's connect with the counselor. Are there any other courses that the student must be enrolled in? And then the cycle begins all over again. This is the progress monitoring that I just described. I apologize. The articulated measures of success. Again, this is for us centrally to make sure that the first 2, the number and percentage of subject borderline and off-track students identified to take an online credit recovery course. We want to make sure that centrally the sites have access to the tools necessary to identify quickly who these students are. If you go down to the third bullet there, the number and percentage of students with an attendance rate less than 50% in an online credit recovery course. Again, these articulated measures are put in place so that we quickly identify students who are at risk of not completing the course. Attendance is a big indicator of not making progress, and that should alert us to respond appropriately. And ultimately, the last bullet here is we want to make sure that all of the stakeholders involved, if a student is on track or is off track for A through G, and we've invested the time, the energy, the resources to ensure that the student takes the course, we ultimately do that with we want to follow through to make sure that that student actually takes advantage of the opportunity that they now have to apply to a UC, CSU, college, or university. That's ultimately what we want to ensure it takes place. And lastly, all of this is under the umbrella. It's all connected to our district priorities, primarily under the graduation and A through G element. All of these efforts are, our attempt to ensure that kids are either staying on track for graduation in A through G or are moving from off track to on track or getting closer to being on track. The credit recovery program isn't necessarily targeting just seniors. This is for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students, or the minute they fall off track, we're trying to get them back on track. And this is ultimately how we're holding ourselves accountable to ensure that we're targeting all students. And that's our presentation for you tonight. Do you have any questions?
So thank you so much. First, we are going to take comments from the public. Dr. Quinto, do we have any comments from the public at this time?
I see none, ma'am.
Board member questions. Board member Minnick.
Thank you. I just had a quick question on this slide. So obviously these are all the across the bottom are the students' home schools, correct?
Yes, sir.
That came from. And so what we're seeing here, is this just for Accelerated Academy, or is this in other credit recovery locations around the district?
The latter. So every school, it kind of has uses 0 and 7th periods and other periods to provide online learning as a recovery method.
Okay, so that was kind of my follow-up question. Maybe you can clarify. Do all our high school sites provide this credit recovery option for kids that are falling behind, or are they limited depending on where they're going to school? And I know Accelerated is kind of a hub for many kids that need a more intensive kind of version of it. Can you kind of give a little bit of a clarity on that?
So the answer to the first question is yes, all sites do have access to online recovery. All sites use it. But to speak to your kind of secondary points, it's not used with the same, extensiveness, meaning, it's not as comprehensive. At my site, at SAC Accelerated, we use it exclusively, and we use it for students that are significantly behind. At the other sites, it's used to kind of, with a scalpel, identify a student who could just get, put back on A through G compliance track or graduation track. But everyone does offer it, and it's used increasingly.
Great. Yeah, that is it. Thank you.
Okay.
So I have a couple questions. Oh, I'm sorry. We have one more board member comment from board member Bridget.
Thank you, President Ryan. I just had a question about the priority elements slide. So I'm assuming that this is like a dashboard that goes to the counselors. Is that correct?
In the broadest sense, yes, but actually it's more of a system tool. So we actually share this with principals and basically system leaders. So, a lot of the counseling work, as Ms. Espinosa spoke to, are more discrete measures. That is getting at more of a summative system view, so that from the superintendent to our instructional assistant superintendents to other central office leaders, we're all looking at the same data together and under the banner of just how are we helping to get students to graduate. So I'd say it's a broad kind of business intelligence view as well as informing to some degree the council work. But they have more specific measures through the articulated measures of success. This is more of like the high-level view of just how's the system working overall.
Okay, so I guess my question is, at our school sites, there is several hundred students per counselor, right, that they're trying to see throughout the year and get them back on track. And we've all heard of the term falling through the cracks, right? And we've seen over the years many students falling through the cracks. So what are we doing to make sure that our students are not falling through the cracks? Are we then sending, does this system like generate a report that's like a red flag that says like, hey, this student's like, failing in this class, or this student may have gotten a D in their first year of algebra, but they've moved on to second year algebra?
So yes. So let me show you. This printout here is a view of what counselors have access to identify whether or not a student is on track or off track for graduation. And they can use this and narrow and query students, on a regular basis to identify who's off track and on track. So we've also, this last year, created a tool for them to also monitor and communicate the plans for students who, for example, are off track for graduation, and monitor whether or not they've offered the student the opportunity and then communicated back to us if the student actually opted out. So the expectation is we're not going to force anybody to take these courses, but we want to ensure that we've communicated to students and parents that they had the opportunity and that they know that they're risking not being on track by opting out of those courses. So that has been embedded in the counselor tools. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's great. So I'm glad that we have many tools that help our students in the long run. My only ask is like my only question is like how are we making sure that the counselors are doing, like, getting the information and getting to the right students? Do they have a system in place where they're pulling regular reports?
Yes, so Mr. Niblock sends a weekly report to all of the school sites, which gives them an overall view of the completion and progress towards completion. And I share that also with counselors on a monthly basis so that they're reviewing the progress towards completion for all of their schools. I also regularly send lists of students who, for example, right now, that's the work that we're in, who are still not enrolled in a credit recovery course, and asking the whys and following up on a regular basis. And we will have those check-in dates throughout the year. And that would be my role, to ensure that I'm following up with every site and those are the articulated measures of success. Those are the ones that we will be reviewing on a regular basis, and then we communicate back out to school sites.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Credit recovery has kind of been my little pet project since day one. So I appreciate your efforts in getting our kids on track.
Board Member Wu.
Thank you, President Ryan. Ms. Espinoza, you were mentioning that you were talking to students about why they haven't enrolled into the credit recovery. One of the hallmarks, I believe, that we incorporated or imposed in our expanded learning summer program was we made it an opt-out situation rather than an opt-in situation. Would it be useful to take that position as well during this for the credit recovery program?
I believe we've informally instituted that already. So we've produced the list of students who need to be enrolled in credit recovery courses. That would be depicted by the first business process that I shared with you. So counselors are querying those students and then targeting them to be enrolled. And if the student chooses not to, then they would log an opt-out reason. Like, they would have to communicate back up. So we didn't send out letters, but we could certainly explore something like that. But yes and no, but we could definitely improve on that practice.
Let me follow up on that.
Sure.
Is the decision entirely the students, or is the decision in conjunction with the parent?
It's in conjunction with the parents. Like I said, the students that we're targeting are either at risk of not being eligible to apply to a four-year or graduate. So the stakes are pretty high. So we want to make sure that there's communication with the parents when we're opting students out.
Thank you, Board Member Wu. I guess I have the closing couple of questions and comments. I really appreciate this initiative. I have to say this has been a challenging year in many regards, and yet we've seen some tremendous bright spots in ensuring that students are actually having student achievement lifted throughout the district through a variety of interventions that have been put in place, this being one of them. I really appreciate in the first slide this idea that equity, access, and social justice triggers a moral call to action irrespective of parent advocacy. I've often had this conversation with Ms. Guillen and others. We shouldn't have to be fortunate enough to live in a household where our parents can advocate for us when we fall off track. And what intrigues me and encourages me about the interventions you have is that you've essentially created an early warning system that takes the guesswork out of it and ensures that parents don't have to be advocates, that we are just as a system doing the right thing. What I did not see in the slides presented was disaggregated data on the impact of the credit recovery program. And I wanted to know if you had disaggregated data and if there was a tale that data was telling about the student population that saw the greatest gains from this credit intervention strategy.
So we could certainly bring that back to the board.
I would appreciate that. The final thing, comment or question, I wanted to have Ms. Espinoza just address the credit recovery business process slide, and I think slide 7, the counselor's schedule business review process. I think it's really outstanding to have something like that in place so that in fact we're ensuring that students don't get touched by luck, but that in fact we are in real time as we continue to hear, because that is absolutely necessary for meeting student needs. Having interventions occur. So thank you for the hard work that you have put in place for that, that business review process. How is that being communicated with counselors on the ground?
So as mentioned at the beginning, last year, it was our very first meeting. I was brand new superintendent. If you recall, that was the very first meeting that we had with principals and counselors in the same room. That was the first time that we introduced this work, and it was our first time really trying to implement a standardized work process, and that was a challenge. Our system was not necessarily used to that. So it's taken a whole year of consistent follow-up, and I'll tell you, we're still working on that. So we've identified criteria and we've shared the same business processes, and we're connecting individually with counseling teams, and it's part of our standard agenda items in our counseling meetings where we're revisiting where we are in regards to the articulated measures of success that we just discussed, right? So this is a standard agenda item because students are they're taking revolving courses. We can't say that at semester our job is done because new students are identified throughout the year. So it's a work in progress. We're working with our system and our counseling team to make sure they understand the definitions, the matrix, right? Like when the benchmarks that we're monitoring, training them on the tools that we've made available for them, and we're constantly refining to make sure that we're making that process more efficient for them. But those are the avenues right now, just the monthly meetings, and then the bi-weekly check-ins and the reports that we're sending out weekly with the progress in this particular area.
Thank you. I so appreciate your efforts. And I do just want to point out the correlation between this and the business processes that the superintendent and administration are trying to put in place for our budgeting. I remember a conversation that we had a few months ago about the astonishing lack of business processes that were in place in Sac City Unified to ensure that, in fact, we were in an efficient, effective, student-centered way meeting the needs of our students in real time. And this is a great example of that. And the budget process, I'm hopeful, under Dr. Quinto's leadership, will mirror this level of detail and accountability. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on.
President Ryan, if I
yes.
can just comment very quickly. I definitely echo your comments on the relationship between what you're seeing with respect to graduation and A to G and how that will translate into monitoring our budgets and protocols for budget development as well. But I also just want to say to the board that in addition to all of this work that's being done by staff, you mentioned the early warning system, and we're very excited to bring back to the board in the next few weeks and present to you what we're doing also in the area of early warning systems. We've built a system that looks at both the social emotional well-being of our students as well as the academic well-being of our students, looking at attendance, behavior and academic achievement, and how do we intervene as quickly as possible when students are demonstrating deficiencies in any of those areas?
Thank you, Superintendent Aguilar. I don't think we have any further board member questions or comments. Thank you for your work. Item 9.2, Constituent Service Report by Stefan Brown.
President Ryan, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, it is with pleasure that I present to you the first of many quarterly reports for the Constituent Services Office. It is our hope that these updates will allow you to gain additional insight on the issues being presented to our office, trends that may be developing in our schools and in our district as a whole, and the resolutions being suggested by the Constituent Service Office. In essence, tonight's report is a brief state of the office report. This year, the Constituent Service Office joined forces with the Student Hearing and Placement Department, allowing us to be more responsive to our constituents. Allowing us to be more responsive to our constituents. We're a department of 5 individuals, 3 ombudspersons, Cindy Kilby, Janet Petullo, and Pat Lamar, and 1 office technician, Kim Petty. Our mission is simple. CSO's mission is to guide Sac City parents and community members on the most effective route to address and resolve their concerns. In many ways, we are traffic cops, directing people to the most efficient way to address their concerns. In addition to, we enhanced our website. The website will serve many functions, including allowing constituents to contact us directly. In addition, we intend to post various items on the website that will serve as information to the public. And we serve several functions. We facilitate complaints and seek resolutions. We support school sites and departments. We identify, track, and report trends. And we develop and propose ideas for goal achievement. I have some data to present to you. All of the data tonight is based on the first 3 months of the year, the first quarter for us. The date range is July 1st through October 1st, 2018. First data piece I want to present deals with the geography of the contacts. Where do they come from? We've broken them down by trustee area. The numbers do not necessarily mean complaints. The numbers represent contacts. Sometimes a contact is a request for information. Every contact is not a complaint. So you see here, trustee area 1, Member Hanson, 38 contacts from July 1 to October 1. Trustee area 2, Member Cochran, 72 contacts from that area. Trustee area 3, Member Pritchett, 75 contacts from July 1 to October 1. Trustee area 4, Mr. Minnick, 40 contacts. Trustee area 5, Ms. Vang, 56 contacts from July 1 to October 1. Trustee area 6, Mr. Wu, 39 contacts. Trustee area 7, Ms. Ryan,
39 contacts as well. There were 51 sort of district general contacts that don't easily fit into a trustee area, so we label them district general. Slide 2 focuses on how are people reaching our office. And you see clearly about 36% contact our office via telephone, 35% are walk-ins. There's a big drop-off to the next way to contact us, which is through web form. That's an email system where folks can contact us. The next slide focuses on who's contacting us. Parents, clearly, as would be expected, are the dominant contact group. 84, pretty much 85% of all contacts come from parents. It's a huge drop off to the next one, sort of community members, and then about, kind of hard to see, about 5% come from board member referrals or somehow through the board office. The next one is the reasons people contact our office. And clearly, for the first, and many of these you could even take away July and just focus on August. Most of these are August on, mid-August on. Clearly, the reason people contact our office the most is permit-related or CONCAP-related or some sort of enrollment issue. There's a pretty significant drop-off after that to academic and grade-related issues, special education, complaints on staff, etc. So that concludes the first quarterly report, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Are there any public comments? No public comments?
There are.
Okay.
I could have Ms. Liz Guillen.
Thank you, Dr. Quinto. Ms. Guillen, you approach the bench, or rather the dais.
May the court please?
Yes.
May it please the court. Liz Guillen with Public Advocates. I wanted to share, in case folks don't know, that the Department of Ed is having a stakeholder input session, having actually 3 of them, and it relates to this issue. The input they're wanting to get from the community is the uniform complaint procedure. And I know that that is a procedure that a lot of people don't use because they say it doesn't work. And at the same time, I think that if it worked, the district would have a better handle on being able to meet the needs of its constituents, which means that they don't necessarily need to go through an investigation that, you know, that parents and community find dissatisfying, and all those things that I hear complaints about. So I'm encouraging folks who would like to use the uniform complaint procedure to provide input. I want to give the dates, but my iPhone is not working properly and I can't get them. I believe it's October 15th and the 22nd, but I will forward those dates to put them on on the minutes and also to anyone who would ask me. But I think you could also find them on the State Department of Ed's website. This is really important. They're going to revise regulations and process, which for many years has been a real problem for people to try to make complaints and to have those complaints resolved. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Guillen. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, Member Vang.
Thank you, Trustee Wu.
First president, sorry.
No respect.
Mr. Brown, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm really excited about the constituent service office and the work that you guys are doing, and I look forward to our quarterly reports. I did have just a few comments in question. I think the first one, Ms. Guillen had brought up the uniform complaint procedure, and I wanted to know what role does that play with the constituent services office, if you can speak a little bit on that.
Sure, it's a fair question.
Okay.
The uniform complaints in this district are handled through human resources. We are in regular contact with them, and there is some collaboration, but the primary responsibility to address uniform complaints is through human resources.
So then walk me through this. So when someone submit a uniform complaint procedure, they just go through HR. They don't, or if someone calls the office, do you direct them? I'm just trying to understand as a parent. Right?
Yeah, so uniform complaints, by definition, address certain issues related to, you want to?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Uniform complaints direct specific issues that are codified in law. They may not address many of the issues you see in our report here, and that comes through the Constituent Services Office.
The other question I had was, is there a possibility, I think that as you're handling these, the constituents who are calling in or walking in, is there a way to also do a follow-up to see what their customer satisfaction was, right? So like you close a case, I would like to know if the parent or the constituent was satisfied with the service of the school district.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things we're working on is mastering the follow-up procedure. I think for an office that's truly been up and running 7 weeks, we've done a good job, but that's one of our focus areas. How do we follow up on these 410 contacts to make sure that their services have been received or their questions have been answered? There needs to be more. When we achieve mastery, we will have mastered the art of following up with our departments or schools to make sure that the constituent receive their services.
And then just a point of clarity, when you, on slide 6, it says walk-in. Is that walk-in to CERNA? Is that walking at the school sites? Is that?
Those are walk-ins to CERNA. An issue may start at a school site and then they come down to the district office, but these specifically are walk-ins to CERNAs. Important to keep in mind that many of these are permit related. That's a seasonal phenomenon that we would not experience in late October or November. So many parents walked in requesting permits to other schools that was outside of their attendance area.
Okay. And then I just wanted to point something out. I was looking at slide 8 and I was telling Trustee Pritchett that we had one thank you at the bottom. So maybe that might go up one day, but
it's important that we have a category for good news.
Thank you. It was at the bottom. So I just, right? So let's try to double that. I think the last thing is, given that you have been up running for 7 weeks, I think, because I think customer service is really important to me, even as an elected or as someone who is an advocate for our parents. I would love, given the fact that we've only been around, you said you've been running this office for 7 weeks, is that I don't know if we want to do a campaign or more information, just so that folks know that we have a constituent services at the school district. I think that's important, right? Whether that's like magnets or whatnot or something, so that our parents and our community knows that we actually have a constituent services office, and that would be really great. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Member Pritchett and then Vice President Minnick.
Thank you, Member Wu. Fawn, I cannot express my gratitude for this project that staff has put into this. Before I was a board member, I was also a parent and still am a parent. And I remember, and let me mind you, a very involved parent at school sites. I remember the feeling of being lost, didn't know where to turn when I had issues, right? And I vowed, 6 years ago that I would help people in my community figure out our tangled little web and help, resolve issues within my community. And as you can see, I think I had the highest amount of contacts, right? I get calls weekly. Mm-hmm. And I love that I can just send it to constituent services and know that it's being taken care of. So I just wanted to tell you how much I really appreciate that. And I know that we're working on ways that you guys let us, like if I send you something, then I know that it's been taken care of. I know we're working out a program for that because that's very helpful for me, knowing that the people in my community and all of our communities, their issues are being taken care of or their questions. I want to kind of go off of what Member Vang was saying. Number one, regarding the uniform complaint procedure, is that on the website where, with our whole constituent services? It is?
It's on the website under the HR page. We can ensure that there are links in both places.
Okay, that would be great if you can put it under the constituent services portion as well. And then, Member Vang, you had a great idea doing magnets and stuff, maybe even like just business cards that say like where to contact, and also maybe working with our communications director of putting together something on our Facebook page, so that way we can push it out to our community associations, the PTOs, PTGs, PTAs in our area, so that way people know that it exists. So,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your work on this. I really do appreciate it.
No problem.
Vice President Minnick.
Thank you. I do want to echo what Member Pritchett said, because as someone who's been a parent in this district for a long time, since 2003, I spent many angry moments at home going like, who's running the show over there? I don't know who to talk to. And so it's nice to have a streamlined system, and I feel like this really helps. My question came from the slide of the source of constituent types. My question was, and forgive me if I spaced out if you said it, was specifically around board members as a constituent type. Because we kind of have a system in place with our board office to gather information through Mr. Browning, and so I was trying to figure out what those scenarios look like. I know there's been times where I have requested like an ombudsperson work with a parent at a site that was having some sort of struggle, but it kind of went through. But it was before this office. Really it was in existence. So I was trying to figure out what a scenario would be where a board member would be initiating a request through your office.
Yeah, so we do have regular contact with Mr. Browning. We work closely together to ensure that the services are reaching the people who request it. Sometimes I think what this means here is it's the origin of the contact. It didn't come from a parent. It didn't come from a community member. Whatever it was, whatever the request was, sometimes a constituent may go through the board office for whatever reason, and it's directed to us.
So your first point of contact would be from a board member, but it might be on behalf of a constituent or something like that.
That could be there, or it could be a constituent for whatever reason contacting the board office first, and then that contact is forwarded to us. It would still here at least be labeled through the board office or a board member. Maybe board office would be a better description.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I'll call myself.
Board Member Wu.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. This has been long in coming, and I appreciate this first quarterly report. When I first brought the notion of constituent services based on the Golden Bell Award that Natomas had won, this is very much what I had in mind, but I had, in addition, and maybe for future quarterly reports, this can be incorporated in the future quarterly reports, and that is not only by constituent types, but how quickly the constituents' problems were resolved. I mean, a district permit might be a matter of a day or something like that. But if they have they need behavioral support, or they have sexual harassment, or there's bullying on campus, those are much less frequent, but they are very much more troubling. They're much more troubling to the parent, and they're much more troubling to the student. And it would also help. So two things would help us, I believe. One is the problem resolved, and how might that problem be resolved? Now, I don't want to expose any confidences. I don't want to expose any children. I'm very sensitive to that. But in a general nature, you might share with us what the resolution might have looked like, if you can. If you can't, that can be an explanation as well. And then how much time, how much resources might that take? Because I imagine something like that being more complex, involving greater sensitivity, might take greater resources to resolve as well. So a district permit, maybe a day, maybe an hour, or 30 minutes worth of a staff person's time. A bullying problem might take a week, 2 weeks. But we sit here twice a month during board meetings, and we hear the cries of parents. We hear the cries of students, and we would like a sense of comfort that their needs and their complaints are being resolved, how long that resolution took, and what might the resolution have been, if that can be shared. And to me, that's the expansion of this report, the next phase that I see being incorporated as a quarterly report to the board. I appreciate if you could do that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, First Vice President Wu. Our final comment and question is from Board Member Cochran.
I'd like to thank Member Wu for having the idea initially, and also to comment that Mr. Brown has had so many contacts with almost every school and site in the district. He's an excellent choice for this. I'm really happy, and I know that staff will be happy that I won't be pestering them anymore to solve problems like broken air conditioners and so forth, or skunks crawling under buildings, because now we've got Mr. Brown. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Brown, for all of your work. I'd also like to thank Nathaniel Browning, who did much of the work prior to the handoff to Stefan, and I think it would be remiss if we didn't recognize his efforts. This is absolutely necessary. I know that when we were going out to do our strategic plan a couple of years ago, consistently the feedback we got was that customer service was a huge issue for families, for students across the district. And it is astonishing to me that we lacked a real mechanism to track at this level where complaints were coming in, to better understand those complaints as a tool for ensuring that we in fact were putting in place the types of responses and services to be better customer service oriented providers. So thank you for your work. I deeply appreciate it. Moving on to item 9.3, Board Policy 5147.5, the sexual harassment policy, first reading.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, board members, superintendent. Raul Bozio, in-house counsel here to give you an overview of the work we've done to revise and update our board policy 5145.7, focusing on sexual harassment and student sexual harassment and student rights. As an overview of our revisions, they're designed primarily to ensure the continuing compliance with state and federal law that will result in maintaining a safe learning environment for all of our students. We've been in compliance and we need to continue to be in compliance and improve our ability to comply with Title IX, the federal law, state law, Ed Code, Section 200 and the sections that follow that set out the legal requirements for maintaining our safe schools. Throughout the process of revising the policy, we worked collaboratively with our community to make the improvements. We really focused on working with students and getting student voice involved here. We met a number of times with student groups from CK McClatchy, from our SAC, as well as working with other community groups, including an advocacy group called ERA, Equal Rights Advocates. And they provided really great, helpful feedback to us as we went through the process of updating and improving and making our policy much better, stronger, clearer. Of course, we tried to take out as much legalese as we can to make it as effective and clear for our students and our community. Sometimes some of that is a little bit unavoidable. To highlight a number of our important improvements that we've made to the policy. If you look bottom of page 1, top of page 2, a very clear definition that follows Ed Code, Section 220 and the other sections there to define what sexual harassment means. And it can be different in different scenarios. It could be the primary, of course, that we hear most about. Has to do with a hostile environment, of course. Page 2 also contains a very helpful list of examples of prohibited conduct, trying to speak exactly to the students in our community to give them a clear idea and understanding of what we're talking about here and what exactly is prohibited and what we're trying to avoid. The revised policy sends a clear and unambiguous message that students do not have to endure sexual harassment. And it strongly encourages all persons, students, staff, and parents to report any incidents of sexual harassment of which they may become aware. The revised policy details information about the procedures for investigating complaints, including the formal procedures of the Uniform Complaint Policy. And it designates a school site Title IX administrator and the district Title IX officer to conduct investigations and directs that investigation procedures will be further detailed in our regulation. Mr. Brown here with us tonight is our district Title IX officer for students and relating to student issues and student harassment. So it dovetails nicely with his previous presentation, and some of those matters that come before his office fit into this category of sexual harassment. These are some of the very important updates or improvements we tried to make to the policy. Try to clarify in the revised policy that whether a complaint or an issue alleging harassment, whether it comes to the attention of the school or the district, verbally or in written form, we have a duty to investigate, to document that investigation, to provide a report to the victim as well. In that regard, Mr. Brown's office and I have worked together to create an improved complaint form, again, that is trying to address the needs of students, be clear, concise, available, and those sorts of things that are very important. Again, this was one of our big focuses. The revised policy also seeks to explain that, again, really our focus as a district is to prevent a hostile environment from occurring on campus, and we need to be always striving to maintain the students' rights to their education and free from harassment. And as the first bullet points out, a hot topic that was discussed quite a bit, and we worked to clarify, the district's duties may apply in situations even that involve social media, online behavior, cyber harassment, if you will, or events that take place at times perhaps off campus. But if they kind of spread and cause a hostile environment on our campus, that is when we have a duty to take appropriate action in each case and to try to prevent and do what we need to do to take the steps to prevent the hostile environment from occurring on campus. So again, even if events and behavior take place online off campus, that may be beyond our jurisdiction to act directly upon, but we have to be aware of the potential for those matters to spread onto our campus, and that is clearly set out in the revised policy. Lastly, another important section of the policy, as you can see, is to improve and expand upon the training for district administration, staff, and students regarding, again, their rights to be free from harassment and discrimination. Some of this was already in the existing policy, but it's really expanded upon, clarified, and so forth. Again, not just training for district administrators and staff, but also for our students. Mr. Brown and I have conducted a number of trainings for all of our school site designees. That's an administrator from every school, whether it's the principal, most likely at an elementary school, or an assistant principal at a middle or high school. They've all attended training regarding Title IX and sexual harassment and our processes that we put in place for documenting and investigating those matters. And lastly, the revised policy clarifies our duties to, again, maintain records and audit different complaints and investigations from all of our school sites, and Mr. Brown's office is handling those matters and maintaining those. With that, I will take some questions, and Mr. Brown is here as well to take any questions you may have.
Do we have any public comment at this time?
No public comment, Madam President.
Okay, I will just say we had a chance to fully vet this policy in policy committee. We had robust conversation and stakeholder input, including from our students. So I feel very comfortable with the policy, and this is just a first reading. Do we have any board member comments or questions? No, thank you so much for your time. Moving on to 9.4, approve the lease exchange agreement between Mogavari Bardis, and then we will move on to consent agenda and communications updates and employee organizational reports. Thank you to everyone who has stayed to participate in that.
Good evening again, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. Before you, I think is being passed around, is an exchange agreement. Actually, it's an exclusive negotiating agreement between the school district and the development team of Mogavari Bardis. This probably sounds familiar. We've been before you several times. This is a culmination of several years worth of work. Ultimately, what we are doing tonight is asking the board to approve this ENA to allow the team of Mogavari Bardis to do an additional 6 months worth of due diligence at the old Marshall site, which could be extended to a year. And during the same time, we will be working on an exchange agreement that would ultimately allow the district to acquire a piece of property that would be suitable for some kind of educational purposes down the road. That would be based on a fair market value of the old Marshall School site, which we will be conducting a new appraisal on. So the terms of the ENA are very, very simple. We will also be following that up with a right of entry agreement, again, to allow the team full access to the facility to complete their testing and all the reports that they have to acquire in order to pursue development on the property. Not very simple. I'll take questions if I can.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. I know that we've had a chance to discuss this in detail as the process has evolved over the last week. Do we have any public comments on this item?
No public comment, Madam President.
Do we have any questions or comments from board members? We do have one from Board Member Cochran.
I'd like to thank you for the work that is done on this, and I'd like to move that we pass this.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you very much. Oh, and our student board member preferential vote. This is one of those days. I apologize.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 10.0, consent agenda.
So move.
Second, student preferential vote.
I vote yes on all open session items.
Thank you, Board Member Halbo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 11.0, communications. Item 11.1, employee organizational reports. First organizational report will be held by SCTA. Do we have anyone from SCTA? Okay, so they are not here, so we are moving on to our next organizational report, SEIU, which I believe has asked to present alongside TCS, Teamsters, and UPE. That means that instead of 3 minutes, you actually have 12 minutes to present.
President Ryan, board members, Superintendent Aguilar, good evening. My name is Richard Owen. I'm the Executive Director of United Professional Educators. That name has special meaning tonight as my remarks will represent 4 of the 5 bargaining units within SCUSD. And as such, we will use the combined minutes to address you as one voice. We stand together tonight because the budgetary and academic challenges that we face as a district will require a new shared vision and the establishment of a new collaborative culture that is not based on position-based approach, but one that focuses on an interest-based approach. We have to begin to think a little differently in this district. But before we can launch that process, it is necessary to have an honest and courageous conversation that admits and acknowledges why we find ourselves in dire straits. The district has been a top-down culture for many years that has ignored the voices of its many partners, thus creating a climate of distrust and pitted what should be natural allies against each other. Your labor partners are still not entirely sure how to invest because of frequent turnover of superintendents and the constant labor conflict that has caused us to wait it out, so to speak, until the next leader arrives. Unfortunately, this latest fiscal crisis was totally preventable in many respects because we counted on one-time funds and grants to sustain ongoing programs. This combined with the pressures of special education encroachment on the general fund and the rising expenses related to pensions and health care plans, uneven distribution of health care premiums among labor partners has left us extremely vulnerable to eventual state takeover if we don't take immediate action. Before we can negotiate in good faith, we require the board to demonstrate through its actions that it is willing to eliminate administrative bloat and identify cost savings at the top before we can begin to have conversations about how labor partners can assist in this effort. SCTA submitted a 3-page document identifying potential savings, and they also called out what appears to be expanded budgets in some departments at a time of necessary belt tightening. We believe that those are fair questions, and we too are eager to hear your written response to those questions. They also indicated that all cuts should be as far away from classroom as possible, and we agree. There's one caveat, however, and that is we need to have an expanded definition of what that means. This time, let us remember and appreciate the role that our classified staff play in making the classrooms places of learning. The grounds must be kept, and they must be safe. The electrical, the plumbing, the roofing, the food must be prepared. And our office managers and clerical staff keep these classrooms operational. I could go on, but you get the point. We are truly interconnected, and as such, any labor sacrifices must be fair and equitable, not on the backs of classified staff. In fact, we believe that we can do this without losing vital staff if every partner in this ecosystem gives a little. We should not and cannot prey on one of our partners in solving this crisis. Nevertheless, let's be honest and tell the public that 89 cents out of every dollar which you have done tonight in the district is spent on salaries and benefits. We need to do better on that front. We should immediately cease filling vacant positions and collaborate on other cost-saving measures such as more competition with our health plan brokers, which we brought to the Superintendent of Board President Ryan and the Superintendent. These brokers seem to always exceed other competitors' bids, and yet we continue to use them, costing us millions of dollars. Please know that this is a necessary and vital first step required to build trust, and we know with certainty that the district has implemented policies, practices, and procedures that will serve as, quote, board inspection protocol to make sure that this never happens again. After this first step, we will willingly join with you to discuss and negotiate what are necessary steps to get us out of this unhealthy condition. Having said that, let us also know that within every adversity lies the seed to an equivalent advantage. Our standing together tonight as a labor coalition is an indication of that advantage and our intentions. We acknowledge that we are not without some responsibility here, and we are stepping up and out to change the labor management dynamic in this district. We cannot continue with what we've always done. We must evolve from an old industrial model of labor management relations to one that promotes professionalism, collaboration, and social justice. This is a complex ecosystem that is interconnected. This means that if you move any one entity in this district, you must move the whole system. We believe that in this top-down, highly complex and resistant system that we reside, that this labor management coalition can collectively torque this tough system and create pressures that will bring about a new collaborative culture in this district. The research is clear. Powerful labor management partnerships is a catalyst for highly collaborative schools, and we should never, ever forget that. This is powerful energy and synergy, and we cannot blow this unique opportunity. As such, we are asking this board to designate 2 board members who will join us in all future trainings, and that Superintendent Aguilar also commit himself to be a full participant in these trainings. We cannot do this without you there. Lastly, the most important thing to remember as we go through this together is that when this district gets the flu, all of our students suffer. And immigrant, English language learners, Latino and African American and special needs students are disproportionately impacted, and they get pneumonia. This is unacceptable, so we challenge all labor partners and invite all labor partners, like we have previously done, to be part of this effort to change this labor management paradigm in this district. We can do a better job. Right now, as I listen to the meeting tonight, and all of the folks that have spoken, the other labor partner that is not present in this coalition, need to understand that if we continue to do things as we always done, we're going to get the same results that we've always gotten. I've witnessed this for over 30 years in this district. It's time to do this different. So we invite all labor partners. We invite this board to be willing partners. I speak on behalf of United Professional Educators, and the fact that I'm here telling you that we're not going to do this or not willing to do this on the backs of classified staff should send you a powerful message. These folks that stand here with us are very vital to what happens in the classroom, so we need a broad definition of what it means to keep this away from the classroom, which we agree with. So we look forward to working with you. We're willing to talk about anything and everything. We're willing to have courageous conversations. But we need to be honest and acknowledge that the district really did screw this one up. But we can do better, and we will do better. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I know that several partners approached me yesterday and asked if I would be willing to participate as a member of the consortium, as a board liaison. So certainly I want to ask for my board's support before making that commitment, but provided that the board is supportive in me doing that, and I'm actually looking, are you all supportive of me doing that? Then I will absolutely be a participant. I think I've shared with you in my family, we have teachers, we have former custodians, we have current bus drivers, we have after-school service providers. I mean, we have everything. And so I truly understand what it means to be a community, a village serving our students.
Thank you.
Board Member Wu, First Vice President Wu.
President Ryan, thank you. Mr. Owen, you asked for 2 volunteers. I'm back working full-time, but I don't expect that to last much beyond getting a new governor, so I would be happy to join your coalition. I think that it is incumbent upon all of us to roll up our sleeves and work together for a common good, a common benefit, and I hope that we will all, the 5 labor partners, the district trustees, we all work together for our children. Thank you.
President Wright, if I may, I'd like to point out that SCTA has been invited. And let me extend that invitation once again. We're not anti-teacher, we're not anti-SCTA. We need everybody at the table. If you ask us to make sacrifices related to health care costs and pension costs and retiree benefits, we can't do it alone. Everybody's got to have some skin in the game. We're willing to have those difficult and courageous conversations with you. One thing we need to recognize that we may not have all gotten this boat at the same time, but we're all in it now. And either we're going to float together or we're going to sink together. And if SCTA is not at the table, they're going to suffer. We all will suffer. And so we need everybody at the table, but we must do that in a spirit of respect. We will not be disrespected in any fashion or form. We must do this in a matter of respect and dignity for each partner, and respect and value each partner as equal partners. And if we can do that and have those difficult conversations, we are certainly willing to do it.
Thank you. Board Member Hanson, followed by Board Member Vang. Or Board Member Pritchett, sorry.
I just want to thank you for coming up together as a coalition. To me, I mean, it's personally inspiring to me. I think it's a long time in coming. It's the right way to do business. You will absolutely work as hard as you can to represent your members and get them the best bargain you can. But that doesn't mean that the board and our labor partners can't work together. That's the way a healthy relationship is. And the new dynamic and paradigm that could happen here will make a huge impact for our students and for the district and the community, and really re-inspire people. And I believe an expanded definition of what is the classroom is absolutely on point. Previous times, when I first got on the board, the budget was balanced on the backs of one union in particular, and I'm not going to support that at all this time. And I don't think we have to get to that point either. I think there's plenty of room. We've got a gigantic budget, so and we've got great new leadership that's part of this district, and working together, we can absolutely get this done. But it does take all of us working together. So all of you stepping forward is the right move for all of us. It's incumbent on us to respond in kind and to make sure we're there as partners 100%. I mean, you can count on me, and we've got the right board at this time too. That's, it's the right people at the right time. So thank you for being part of this.
Thank you, Board Member Hanson. Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Ryan. Thank you, each and every single one of you, in your willingness to roll up your sleeves and help us work with us to fix this issue. It's definitely not a job that we can do on our own, so I really appreciate your willingness. I know that you already have 2 board members that are willing to come and join you guys, but I'm willing to do that as well. So just keep us apprised of those dates, and we'll make sure we're there.
Thank you very much. Once again, we are so appreciative of the spirit of collaboration and continue to look to growing the relationship with the focus on kids.
Thank you. All right.
Moving on to item 11.2, District Parent Advisory Committee. Community Advisory Committee. District English Learner Advisory Committee, Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Committee. Superintendent's Report, item 11.3.
Thank you. Thank you, President Ryan. If I can maybe just ask some of our partners if they can just hang out for just a couple of minutes very quickly. I do want to acknowledge some of them in some of my comments. Thank you, President Ryan. Oh, sorry.
LCAP?
Yeah.
I'm here to speak on behalf of the LCAP.
Okay,
Hi.
LCAP. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I was home.
Good evening, board member, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and board members. My name is Oswaldo Hernandez, recently appointed to the LCAP Parent Advisory Committee, and this is our first report. The first LCAP PAC meeting was held on September the 24th. Members were asked to attend an LCAP orientation. There were 3 orientation trainings offered this week. We're happy to report that we have had good attendance so far, well, excellent attendance so far, should I say. And we added attendance to our norms. The committee is thankful for being selected to serve, and we're also thankful to Kathy because she's a lot of help and she takes really the time to explain everything in terms that everyone at the table is able to understand. The committee has also expressed interest in communicating more frequently with board members so that our comments and questions are received more often rather than just at the end of the year. And lastly, the committee would also kindly ask that the board considers moving the communication piece item agenda earlier because, as you can see, it's a little late right now, and I know I feel for you as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much. We deeply appreciate your update. Item 11.3, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you, President Ryan. I want to just make a few comments, knowing that it's rather late. First and foremost, I want to just share a reflection for a minute. I want to thank Member Cochran for inspiring me this morning with her comments about her thought that we need to make sure that we have an expanded learning summer program next summer, as well as continuing. She mentioned flag football, but I'm sure she's probably referring to elementary athletics because yesterday everyone that spoke that was represented in the last agenda item was part of a press event along with many of our board members, our mayor, council members, and others. And I want to thank everyone for being there yesterday afternoon. As I was arriving to Pony Express, I was touched by seeing a father walking with his young boy wearing a jersey, and the father was carrying a lawn chair. And eventually, as everyone was able to appreciate, we had hundreds of parents and family members sitting on the sidelines cheering on our students from 4 of our schools, Matsuyama, Didion, Sloat, and Wenzel, thank you, Member Minnick and Member Wu. I said that it happened to be my birthday yesterday, and I talked about what a great gift it was to see the parents and their children benefiting from the commitment that we made to equity, access, and social justice. And so I wanted to thank UPE, Teamsters, SEIU, SCTA as well, all of whom contributed to making sure that we could actualize what was a vision a number of months ago. I was touched by the many pictures that I received from individuals with students going to school wearing their jerseys and flag footballs and just students enjoying themselves. I am spending a little bit of time on this topic because I was asked recently whether I thought that I was contributing to the deficit by launching an elementary athletics program, which, as you know, in the startup costs, buying jerseys and footballs and flag belts and such, cost us a little less than $1 million, and the ongoing costs are much lower than that. And truth of the matter is that technically, yes, that is true. And we did the same thing when we launched the summer program, which benefited over 4,000 students. We did the same thing when we said that we would pay for every junior to take the SAT. We did the same thing when we committed to making sure that every student who took an AP course could take their AP test, which cost $90 a test. So technically, that is true. We are investing resources that we have to yet come up with on an ongoing and structural way. I find it very difficult to say that I apologize for that. The reality is that for many, many of our students yesterday, 45 teams, this was probably the first organized elementary sports program that they've participated in, because they do not have a household that is able to pay for the fees to participate and purchase the gear required to enjoy childhood. And ever since my arrival to Sac City, I have written several checks for my own children to participate in activities that I thought were just basic activities that every child should enjoy. Basketball every Thursday cost us, I think, $90 last year. And I saw a flyer earlier this week that my children brought from their school to be in band for a year at a cost of $300 a year. I have 3 young children, so that's $900. Of course, I'm very blessed, and as the highest paid employee, I can write a check for $900. But the idea that my children should enjoy those opportunities and others not be able to enjoy it is the reason why I am going to remain committed and stand with this board to push on the notion that we have to put students at the center of this vision that we have called equity, access, and social justice. And as our partners have mentioned, we all have wants as adults. But the question for us, the courageous conversations that Mr. Owen discussed and described, is to what extent are we going to invest in student needs over those wants? And I feel very fortunate that the relationship that exists between superintendent and board is one that inspires me and makes me believe that we are going to overcome these challenges and be here together celebrating the successes that are sure to come to Sac City Unified students, to this district, and of course to this entire city. So thank you for staying late, for leaning forward with us, and as superintendent and as employee of this board, I want to thank everyone for being courageous and taking this stance.
Thank you, Superintendent Aguilar. We have a couple, yes. We have a couple items that we need to address right now. Nathaniel, you had something you wanted to give me? Okay. So there was an item that appeared under grants, item 10.1 in the consent agenda in error. It was an item to approve the agreement for the peace officer assignment, our SRO assignment, under consent agenda item 10.1A, not listed out in the agenda, but in the book of grants. So what I'm asking the board to do, since we're currently reviewing that contract in our board policy committee, is to rescind that item from the consent agenda that we just passed. Is that correct, Jerry?
So the motion would be to rescind the action to approve the agreement for a peace officer assignment agreement included in the consent agenda under item 10.1A.
So the motion is to rescind the action included under item 10.1A pertaining to the SRO agreement. Do I have a second? Student preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, the motion carries, and we don't have to go back to the consent agenda. Perfect. Item 11.4, President's Board Report. I am going to take the opportunity to read the statement that Superintendent Aguilar and I drafted on our budget challenges. I had meant to read it earlier, but we were running late. The Sacramento City Unified School District's fiscal problems are structural, complex, and not new. The fiscal challenges are the result of the district's decades-long history of operating with an ongoing structural deficit that is not sufficiently prioritized meeting the needs of students. Making real, solid, and permanent reductions in expenditures to address our long-standing fiscal problems requires courage and commitment and working in collaboration with all partners and stakeholders. Quick fixes made within a 30-day period will not serve students well. Therefore, we have notified the Sacramento County Superintendent that the revised budget plan we plan to submit by the state's required October 8th deadline, while making approximately $10 million in cuts, does not contain sufficient reductions to completely eliminate the structural deficit. We simply need more time. To work alongside the Sacramento County Office of Education, the county superintendent's appointed fiscal advisor, our labor partners, and our community to chart a sustainable course that is student-centered. Our fiscal challenges can and will be resolved, however, not with a quick fix. The way forward is working in partnership with shared ownership of the solution. There is no other way to solve this. We have to create a functional collaborative coalition between the district's bargaining partners, the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education, and the community. Fortunately, there are models that exist. We need to look no further than our own backyard, where Elk Grove Unified School District has a working coalition of the district's union leaders. Together, they take responsibility for the health of the district's budget and work together to keep the organization fiscally sound. In Sac City Unified, over the past few months, we have been working diligently to bring together our labor partners, and we are very close to achieving this model. In fact, 4 of our 5 labor partners have formed an unprecedented labor management consortium dedicated to coming up with sustainable solutions by coming to the table and reworking budget priorities that focus on supporting students. The solution we reach in the weeks ahead must come from meaningful input from all stakeholders and reflect the values of fiscal prudence, as well as our unwavering commitment to student success. Our current and future generations of students are counting on us to come together to solve this problem. We are determined not to let them down. And we heard our labor partners earlier speak in the spirit of that shared commitment and determination to serve our students and families in Sac City Unified. And I would be remiss, and I'm remaining under my 5 minutes, if I didn't say that my daughter approached me earlier this week and shared that she had a friend at her school site lose a parent to gun violence this week. And my 8-year-old daughter told me that she wanted me to make a statement in the board meeting. She said, "Mom, I want you to tell everyone that they need to end gun violence." She said, "Listen to me. Say it just like that. End gun violence." You got it? And so I am putting that out there for my daughter Brooklyn, because you are a powerful voice, and all children deserve to grow up with parents in their home and not to have the reality of losing a family member or friend to gun violence. With that, item 11.5, student board member report.
So I'm going to start off with a small summary of what I've heard from some student groups. The Be Here campaign completed a successful attendance awareness month. That was the month of September. They held a rally at Hiram Johnson High School to promote attendance awareness, and they're looking to partner with ASBs and student governments at all the schools in the district to promote attendance awareness that's specific to those schools. The Student Advisory Council is putting out surveys for initiative ideas for the year. We also are going to be holding our first youth council meeting on November 28th from 1 to 3 p.m. here at the Cerna Center. All students are welcome. We'll be marketing for this as we move closer to that date. I attended a Sacramento City Youth Commission meeting on Monday night, and I look forward to working with them as the year progresses. I'd like to thank the facilities for coming to Student Advisory Council, and we can't wait to see how you take what we said and what other groups have said and turn it into action. School is very much in session now. Deficiencies went out, so it's finally settling in with students that school is happening. I've heard lots of wonderful things about AP tests being paid for and the SAT day happening again. It's definitely specific to my school as well, because West Campus is full of people who that is exactly tailored towards them. And it's also been incredible to hear from students at other school sites who wouldn't otherwise have taken the SAT or wouldn't have had the opportunity to take the AP tests, who are going to be doing that this year. If it wasn't for Sarah Nguyen, last year's student board member, I never would have had the opportunity nor would have known anything about the school board. When the students of our district don't know that a school board exists or what it does, we have a problem. I'm working hard to inform the students of our district of the way that policies are implemented and the way that budgets are managed, but this is an impossible task, as I am one full-time student and they are 43,000 of my peers. I am fully willing to stand behind the statement that students shouldn't just be the topic of the discussion, they should be the ones having the discussion. Representation of students can't happen if they don't even know they are being represented. Please don't let Student Advisory Council or other leadership groups or myself be check marks for the district. If we claim to be student-centered, where are the students? Our voice matters, treat it like it does. This week's suggestion box comment comes from my campus, West Campus. This student wrote, "I know this might not be read, but I just wanted to say that my AP Calculus teacher, Mr. Prasher, has done an incredible job so far, and I'm so glad that we have teachers who care." And I personally am actually in Mr. Prasher's AP Stats class, and I totally agree. It is teachers like him who make difference in our students' lives.
Thank you so much, Student Member Halbo. Item 11.6, information sharing by board members. First Vice President Wu.
Thank you, President Ryan. I just wanted to share with my colleagues that I have finally graduated from CSBA's MIG training after 7 years of pursuit. I'm a slow learner. There's only 5 sections. So MIG means Masters in Governance. But what I came away, and then the weekend before I spent at the California School Board Association Board of Directors meeting. What I walked away with is a task force report called Uncharted Waters. It is recommendations for prioritizing student achievement and effective governance in California's charter schools. It has some very good recommendations, which I had discussed with Charter Association in the past, including full and transparent governance and the like. So I will make available to Nathaniel so links to the report can be shared with you. It's very thin. It's only this is.
Great.
In addition, I have I brought home with me from the MIG training a board self-evaluation. So as we go forward with the evaluation of the superintendent, an important element of evaluation for the superintendent is that we periodically evaluate ourselves. So I brought it home. It's only 2 pages, and we can start implementing that as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. First Vice President Wu, I've long advocated for a board self-evaluation, and I appreciate that. It's overdue. Any other board member comments or sharing? None. Board committee reports, 11.7, Board Facilities Committee, Board Budget Committee, Board Governance and Policy Committee.
I was just going to say that the Budget Committee met on a Monday, so we did a quick review of some of the budget items that we discussed this evening, and we'll meet again next month.
Board Governance and Policy Committee, Board Evaluation Committee.
Thank you, Member Wu, for that information. I look forward to looking at it and incorporating it. We are postponing our meeting for tomorrow, but we will have a report by the next board meeting.
Thank you, Board Member Cochran. Item 12.0, Business and Financial Information and Reports. Receive Head Start, Early Head Start reports. Item 13.0, Future Board Meeting Dates and Locations. Our next board meeting will be on October 18th at 4:30 p.m. Item 14.0, Adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Student Board Member Haldo? A motion to adjourn?
You want to stay here all night?
A second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.